Welcome to Biggest Geekus. We are your hosts. I am Joe.
I'm Randy.
Pat.
I'm Patrick.
I
never had to introduce myself before.
You're getting to be a an old hat around here.
Yes. No,
Okay.
Speaking of hats, I really wished I had something other than my sombrero to wear, and that it was even relevant somehow.
Patrick,
I wanted. There you go. I wanted to have a because it's Thanksgiving Thursday. I wanted to have a settler or what's
one of
a
those
colonial
Quakers hats.
Yeah, to identify me as a colonialist, because
right,
might as well. And I don't know, would it be considered cultural appropriation? Not that I care, but
if you wore what?
If I wore a hat that a Quaker might wear. I'm not a Quaker.
Right, probably would.
I'm a cracker.
True.
Not a Quaker.
True.
I guess not for white culture, but maybe religious appropriation. I don't even know if that's a thing.
I don't know.
I guess only if you do it to a Muslim.
Yeah,
perhaps. Anyway, maybe next time. I have a Santa hat which I plan on wearing near Christmas. So whenever we finally get around to recording our episodes ahead of time for the holiday,
we got to get that done.
Yeah, I will have my Santa hat. Anyway, so today, this is episode 63 of our podcast, and the date is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. We are here with Patrick from Pointy Hat Games.
Yes. With a pointy hat.
I'm going to say one other thing though. Everyone under the sound of my voice at this moment, go to Drive-Thru RPG and purchase Elemental Conflux. Do it now.
It's a good little card game. You will love it. I'm not a card game fan, and I like it because it's fast, furious. Oh, I mean, a different game, but it is very fun.
That's copyrighted, I think.
I really don't want Shane to hate
me. So we have Patrick here from Pointy Hat Games. We are going to talk about the Wizard. Today we're doing a class analysis of the Wizard across editions, and then we're going to get into some potential Wizard designy things when we talk about playing in the mud.
Yep.
All right. I'd also like to say we're not doing our regular email and stuff like that. So if you send us a voicemail hoping to hear your voice today on this podcast, too bad.
Maybe next.
Sorry, I think I ruined it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. We'll resume next week. I do want to thank our newest monthly supporter. We now have 2.
Yes. We are flowing in cash.
Yes, except the flowing part.
No.
Yeah, not flowing.
That's all right then. So I should not quit my day job.
Nope, not unless you want to eat ramen the rest for the time being.
Right.
Although ramen might start going up in price like everything else, so who knows? I
assure the audience that I'm not on here just because I was the sole supporter.
Don't give away the secrets.
Keep it safe.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you live in the same town and we all play at the same table a lot. So yeah,
that helps.
It helps some. So thank you for new supporter who's remaining anonymous until this new person lets me know whether or not to no longer make him anonymous or keep him anonymous. So if I hear from you by next time we record and you want us to give you a shout out, then we will. But I've sent you an email. Please respond.
Or at least if you don't mind if we do it. You don't have to want it. You don't have to seek glory, but we will give it to you if it's okay.
Yes. You can give us permission whether you want to or not.
You can.
I'm not sure how that works.
Me neither. Sounds crazy.
We're not going to coerce you into that. So I don't know. Anyway, maybe we'll use interesting persuasive techniques that neither one of us really have.
You never practiced. Yeah, sounds good.
So main topic is class analysis, the wizard. We have a definition here. The wizard is a man. A man.
Correct. That is absolutely 100% correct.
A man.
A male who is
believed to have magical powers and who uses them to harm or help other people.
Hey, that's J.K. Rowling's definition was a wizard is a male magic user.
And they call the females witches, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that is from the Cambridge Dictionary. So just blame all those Brits over there. That's
yeah. That's all. It wasn't me searching endlessly till I found one that said just a man.
Yeah.
Great Britain is canceled.
Yeah.
I know J.K. Rowling is.
Right. And for no good reason.
Nope.
All right. So throughout the DnD editions, the wizard has, at least in the earlier editions, has been definitely singled out and named as the more powerful of the classes.
Yes.
Randy, you mentioned that a little earlier before we started recording, and I remember reading it in the rule cyclopedia. Yep. I don't have the other BECMI individual booklets, right. So not in paper form. They're in PDF, and I had a long day, so I didn't get a chance to review them.
This is BECMI.
Well, it's edited. It's edited.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's some differences between that and the books.
Well, there's basic. There's the basic set by Moldvay.
BX, yeah.
And then there was the one, Eric J. Holmes did basic. And then Moldvay did basic expert. And then this is the third grouping, which was done basic expert companion. That was all Menser, and it was compiled into the Rules Cyclopedia. And there might be some, there might be some editing from those booklets into this, minus the Immortal set. Rules Cyclopedia, to my knowledge, is BECMI.
Okay. I've heard people yammering about different things. So there being a difference between that and the individual.
Oh, maybe then that's what I use for my BECMI.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Anyway, in old D&D, do you happen to have that handy?
Which one?
The old D&D description, or do you have it on PDF?
I have it on PDF.
Okay.
I can access that pretty quickly.
Because I would be interested to see if they you already have it listed here as described as the most powerful character in the game.
That's where it actually says that. That's and almost
it says that pretty much in the BECMI in the rule cyclopedia as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I remember reading that in the first edition wizard description as being called out as
dice.
They did have a D6 hit dice originally. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And they went in a weird progression. So you had a D6 at first level, then you got 1 hit point at second. Then you had 2 D6 at third level, then you got 1 hit point at fourth. That's how they did it. And they did have the PCs. There were no caps really mentioned, but the wizard's chart was like 14 plus or 16 plus, while others stopped at 12. We'll say 12 plus. So there was no concept of a level ending, but I also think there was very little concept. I mean, from what the old guard has said, I'm going mostly on Tim Kask. I've said it before. He said 7th or 8th level. Why would you want to play beyond that? Because you're already a superhero. So,
right.
But they had spells up to I think 6th level. 6th level spells was listed in the white booklets.
Right.
I mean, Patrick, you have a couple of those white booklets, don't you?
A couple of them. I don't think it has like the basic class information, though. I think that's the one white book I'm missing.
Oh, you're missing the Men in Magic one.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I guess we can't talk too intelligently about the wizard from OD+D in terms of like we don't have a working knowledge. None of us have. I've never played the original D&D
We
game.
started in basic
Yeah,
expert,
we did.
right? We didn't start in the old.
So
But
it's
the-
same as me. I was grandfathered into BECMI.
Yeah, but having played Swords and Wizardry, and the white box clones, we've done that. And I can say, we can all say, well, you guys played it at CabinCon last year, that the Wizards were pretty boss. They had, I mean, in terms of like having really good, their spells were like really pretty good. Charm Person was ridiculous. And so there
Yeah,
were
it depends on
What's
the
really
description.
weird is I didn't get to play a wizard in Swords and Wizardry at CabinCon. I played the dwarf fighter.
Because I think we've set the same table, perhaps,
probably.
for that.
And even though you've opened it up for me, I still haven't started playing the wizard in Mudsword.
Right.
But I kind of thought you guys needed some playtime with a rogue, but I guess you guys have other groups that do rogues.
Well, I did, but I think I'm more playing with you. The only time I'm getting to play now is like, we're going to play this Saturday, and you guys seem to be my only group, but I don't really care about that. I mean, I think it'd be neat to watch the rogue to progress, but I mean, it's not necessary. We could have.
I mean, I felt better after the rule change for like dirty fighting.
Yeah,
I felt far more viable.
yeah, I think so too. But so do you guys? So as far as these two guys right here, Joe and Patrick, are huge Wizard fans. So if you can remember looking at the Wizard from the white box version that we played, from what little you know, did you have any feelings about how that Wizard played? Good, bad, ugly?
Well, in comparison, well, to put it in perspective, when we started playing when we were kids, 13, I don't think our adherence to the rules was very good.
Yeah,
So
I think when you're a teenager or even younger, like I was, I think I started in like 3rd grade. My games are always clown shoes.
Yeah,
right. So it's hard to look back and sit with any kind of certainty that comparing play of BX to first and second. I really remember first and second.
Yeah.
And I remember when we played the earlier game, but I also remember we didn't play it right. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, maybe we can't talk to that experience, but BECMI,
especially looking back, or especially now reading the rule cyclopedia version of these spells, and in like sleep, it's just a day wrecker for the bad guys if you have the right, or for the DM wrong group of monsters.
Yep.
I mean, there's no saving throw, and you can get a ton of them. I mean, I remember first edition sleep was similar in that, and it just wiped out a lot of people. And I remember you complaining about that. So
well, yeah, and I think now I don't think I complain. I don't know. I don't complain as much. I just think we have to realize, if you're gonna, like I use sleep, like you mentioned one time, I used sleep on you guys in the mud, sort of using BECMI, and
whole party.
If you hadn't had an NPC, everybody was put down. It would have been over.
Mhm.
And I guess with spells like that, I think I lean toward, there's a good question. So the sleep spell being the guilty party. So when you look at, we haven't gone through all the different editions, but we can say OD+D, BECMI, AD+D 1, AD+D 2. Sleep was pretty much a butt kicker, right?
Oh, sure. I don't have a 2nd edition player's handbook anymore, so I couldn't compare things very well. So it may well have changed enough in 2nd edition that it turned it down a little bit.
I remember as a kid playing a Nintendo game a lot. It was a Pool of Radiance. It was basically a Nintendo port of PC's Pool of Radiance, and that went strictly by I don't know if it was AD+D rules or whether it was BECMI rules, but I tell you, I almost never memorized Magic Missile The
Right.
first level spell of choice was always sleep, because it put groups of people to sleep, and then they had the automatic coup de grace rules in there where you run up and one single hit from somebody will kill somebody who's asleep. So you just run in there and lay waste with the sleep spells.
I have the second edition book open right here. And it says he puts creatures in a comatose slumber. They have to be within 30 feet of each other, up to 30 yards away. 2d4 hit dice. So 2 to 8 hit dice. No monster with 4+3 or more hit dice can be affected. Which you might have did that wrong, but that means you had to be a 5th level character before you'd be immune to sleep, not a 4th level character.
Did that wrong where?
I'm thinking back in the day, we thought 4+3 was the same as 4 hit dice, but not necessarily.
Not
You
necessarily.
could
Yeah.
sleep a 4, but you could only sleep 2 4th level characters.
Right. So that's half, because it's 2 to 16
Yeah.
in the
BECMI.
rule cyclopedia version.
Yeah.
2 to 16.
Yeah.
Otherwise the same. Was there a saving throw?
Nope.
No saving throw in the second edition one either. Okay.
Nope.
And and I guess that's where that whole 30 feet apart thing comes from too.
Yeah.
I remember that was in third edition, there were a lot of spells that had that have to be 30 feet. Everything's within 30 feet of each other.
No creature could be more than 30 feet apart according to that description of that spell.
Right. There wasn't, that's not the way it reads in the BECMI version.
No,
But
and
that's fine.
Patrick mentioned the D6 hit dice and OD+D. I was kind of
Yeah.
surprised. But then it quickly dropped.
Yeah.
In fact, they went to a D4, but they did increase up to 9th level spells. I mean, if you have all the booklets or if you have the rule cyclopedia, they had 9th level spells.
Right.
Going back to the sleep discussion, the only thing I didn't like
right.
about sleep was eventually it did become completely useless.
Right.
Yeah.
You never fought things that, once you surpass a certain level, you would never fight things that would be affected by sleep. I just kind of wish that sleep still had some sort of use. I mean, like, I think 13th Age fixed a little bit of that, where if they don't outright fall asleep, they're at least like made groggy or something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but I wish sleep still did something.
Well, your typical villagers aren't very high hit dice, so you could always walk into a tavern and sleep the whole thing.
And that's a good point.
Yeah, go to the tavern, sleep the whole thing, and then you can take all their stuff.
Well, that's not all. I mean, I think sometimes we forget. And I think having played third edition, where the game is all about your 4 or 5 characters and what they can do, and they have to get better every level, or you got dead levels, or it's boring, or it's not great. You forget about the wider campaign. I mean, a wizard that can cast sleep, even if he's 9th, 10th level. I mean, you could walk into a town, not just like what you said, but like people would fear you because he could, like, with the flick of my wrist, I could have you all fall unconscious, and it'd be like I didn't even waste a bit of my power, and I could still teleport to the next town and do it to them.
Right.
I mean, when you think about that, I get on your adventure, when you're out in the plains fighting demons, sleep's not a good plan. It doesn't make it a spell that's not impressive and to most common folk. And you say, so what? But I mean, even like mayors and dukes would be like, he could sleep half my guards with one spell.
And if he did that at an opportune moment, when someone was attacking the gates, and the wizard just showed up and said, "Hey, you called me Big Nose the other day."
Morgan Kanan.
I go Big Nose,
dude.
What's your cat up to?
I've closed the door on him, and he's doing that scratching at the bottom of the door. Daddy, let me in. You could be dying in there.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that and we'll get to Mudsword later, but when I think about, when I go back and look at the old editions, what I see a lot is I see how I used to think about magic and how I didn't consider things that could have been significant. When I used to think, oh man, sleep sucks now, or oh, this sucks now. And maybe I just didn't think about the wider campaign.
Yeah, because Magic Missile isn't great at first level. Oh, we lost Randy.
No, he's back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yes. So Randy had to hide his face.
Facial hiding.
Yes. So your magic missile is no good, really, at first level, because you cast a spell, you do D6 plus 1 damage at as far as the rule cyclopedia goes,
Correct.
and you don't get any more missiles until your 5th level. And so you really have to wait till 5th level for that to be even worth your first level slot, I think.
Whereas I believe in 1E, I don't know if anybody has access to the 1E player's handbook. I don't have it right here, but I believe it was just every other odd level. And
Yes.
when they dropped it to a D4, but it was 1D4 every odd level. So when you're 11th level,
11
you
D4 plus
have
11.
Yeah, is pretty crazy.
It also helps that there's no saving throw against it and that it automatically hits.
Right.
Well, 64 plus 6 at 11th level, because you only got one missile ever.
Oh, I'm thinking 20th level. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
20th level is 11. Yeah, and so you're like, yeah, and it was never missed. It was, and most things were not immune to force. So magic missile never lost its value.
Right.
I mean, and in first edition, 11 plus 11 is 22. Minimum damage is pretty decent, and 55 is pretty good. Even if you're 20th level, most creatures don't want to get smacked for 40 or 50 damage, and you could do that 8 or 9 times. So you could
Right.
kill things with just magic missile.
You can do something like BAP. Do you give up? BAP. Do you give up?
Right.
Do it
Right.
again. Do it again.
I'll stick my 2 fighters on you, and they'll just cut you down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you still have Vancian, right? In OD&D.
Yes.
You have it
All versions until 5th. Well, I don't know about 4th.
Fourth
So,
is not really Vancian.
right. So 1st, 2nd, and 3rd all had the same memorization, fire and forget thing for wizards. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting that they noted that I noted that in AD&D 1E, they said magic users need high intelligence.
In
They
which
never-
version?
In 1E, they literally said they need high intelligence. That phrase need. I'm sure it was implied, and maybe like high intelligence helps wizards.
Yeah. In first edition, if you didn't have a fairly decent intelligence, you were going to fail your because you had to, whenever you encountered a new spell, you would have to roll percentile. You have to roll, I don't know, is it a percentile or
Yeah,
some
and it
other?
wasn't that. Yeah, and if you were like a 14 or 15 intelligence, it's like a
that good.
60 or 70% chance. So you got a shot. And if you didn't learn it, was it? I can't remember. I think
You had to wait till your next level to try again.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
what it was.
Okay. So that's how we did it.
Yes. I think that's how it was.
I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to wait. So if you had a really sweet spell you were just raring to go with, and then you blew the roll, then it sucked for a level. And it might suck again. There's no guarantees. So even if you have like a 70% chance of it working, of successfully learning the spell. And then you had a maximum number of spells that you could learn as a first edition guy. But we're kind of jumping around.
Yeah,
Once you got to a 19 intelligence, though,
19 was all.
This restriction was lifted.
And you also needed a 19 to be able to learn ninth level spells.
Magic.
Yeah. Let's see here. So BECMI is where they drop their hit dice to 4. Also, there was a damage cap in Rules Cyclopedia.
Oh, really? Even for
20,
Fireball?
20 dice.
Oh,
Oh,
So, but you could go to 36 level.
right.
So
But-
you're still limited to 20 dice. And the reason they said is if they allowed you to go higher, a wizard could just surprise any other wizard and just annihilate them with not even if they made the saving throw. And I'm like, well, 20 dice is going to pretty much wreck a wizard too.
Yeah.
I mean, average damage on 20d6 is
60, 62.
It's
Oh, on 20d6, it's going to be 60. 20 times 3 is 30, 40 damage.
Oh.
No. 20 times 3 is 60 plus another 10 for 0.5. So 70 damage. Oh, yeah. And dig this. A 20th level wizard without a con bonus could have max, let's see, 47 hit points.
Yeah. So even 20 dice is very dangerous.
Yeah. And if you had an 18, you could add 36 more. So you're all but if he rolls average, you're all but dead.
Yeah.
Magic missile next round kills you.
I mean, you get a saving if it's a fireball, you get a saving throw.
Right. So, but if you
if he hits you with a weapon and ties you down and you can't move,
yeah,
you're going to get extra damage from the burning webs, and the DM might just rule that you can't get the saving throw because you can't move.
Yeah. So you'd be hosed. Yeah. But at least it's possible. And don't forget that in the 20th level wizard, saving throws would be ridiculous.
Yeah. Under that system, you're probably 4, 5, 6, 7 at most.
At worst. And so at worst. So that's the worst.
Yeah.
So Patrick, did you didn't play OD&D, neither did Joe, right? You didn't play the white booklets, but you did play the little red, the little blue booklets and the black.
My first D&D sets that were handed over to me by my uncle was the basic box. And he says, this is Dungeons and Dragons. You know, if you learn how to play this, I'll give you the rest of my stuff. So I learned how to play it. I fell in love with it. So he gave me the expert box and then all of his AD&D stuff.
So you never you didn't get the companion or the master's booklets. You went straight to AD&D. That's kind of our path. That was our path.
Yeah.
We were waiting on the companion, and then someone sold me the player's handbook, and we're like, 9th level spells.
Yeah.
I definitely like that.
The same thing.
Yeah, Joe was like, whoa.
Wish. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of wowing.
Except after you read it, then you're like, no, I'm never casting that. Not first edition version.
Not with Randy as my DM.
No.
Rules lawyer. I got the contract. How did you say that exactly, Joe? Yeah, those are good old days. So we've been messing with the Rules Cyclopedia, Joe, and Patrick's played a little bit of it too. Do you have a feel for do you like how the wizard rolls, how it works in that game, or not?
Well, we've only adventured for 3 levels.
True.
So it's hard to tell. So far, it can be a mixed bag, but that's low level play. So it can be a mixed bag for anybody. A fighter can find himself useless, and so can a rogue and a cleric, especially if there's nothing except swinging their sword or whatever that they can do.
Yeah.
So there has been a lot of I'm not doing anything because, I'd only have like first level, only had 1 spell. So he had to get in there and mix it up. And that was kind of nerve wracking.
Yeah. That's not what you're built for.
No. Okay. So, and I don't think we may have had enough people that I think the first session, because that's when Philip was there.
Yeah.
We had 5 or 6 characters. It's 5 or 6. So the wizard could hang back and not worry too much. But the smaller the group, the bigger the chance that you can't just stand in the back and hope that you're going to get protected by the armor encased other people. You know, the peons.
Right.
They have to keep the rabble off of you.
Right.
So smaller groups can be nerve-wracking. Larger groups, it makes it a little more comfortable, and you can, direct, which is what you have to kind of do. I think maybe that's why I've gotten to be that way, is because I play a lot of wizards and played conservatively. I didn't just cast a spell every round of every encounter. So I got to not tell people what to do, but make suggestions and take a step back and look at overall what's going on. So you kind of get to be that way as a player of a wizard Don't you agree, Pat?
Yeah.
You kind of get that way.
And the main problem I've always had with earlier edition Wizards was not just the Vancian spellcasting method, because there are other games that made Vancian spellcasting more palatable. The main thing I don't like about it is the fact that when you sit down to memorize your spells for the day, and you have like one spell slot, it's like, well, I am going to memorize sleep. That is my only spell I can cast. And if it doesn't get used, oh well.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very wizardy. It's like, well, it's like, can you produce a light for us, wizard? It's like, nope, sorry. I've memorized sleep. Well, can you conjure this rope and telekinetically throw it to the other side for us? No, I've memorized sleep. Well, we haven't fought anything. Yeah, but I memorized sleep. I can't change it out. Now, later editions of the game, you had number of spells you have ready, and then you just have like X number of first level spell slots. It's like I can only cast first level spell slots, but I have this small list of spells that I could use, and I'm not stuck with my choice. Some old school players will probably tell you, "Well, that's the game. Get good, son." But
I'm okay with that. Get good, but you
Yep.
can't. You can only get good so far. So,
Yeah.
when you first make up your wizard at first level, you in BECMI you only get 2 spells.
Yeah.
Only 2. So, and you only can cast 1. So, there's only so much getting good as far as that goes. As far as spell selection goes, now when you're on at the table doing your thing, you only have your 1 spell. The only way you are going to get good is in noticing when it's a good idea, when it's good to cast it. And until you get more through play, there's not much more than that. You can be good at other things other than casting spells, and that's fine too. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Low levels have a certain feel, and for wizards, low level is hide until you get higher level.
yeah,
Well,
Essentially, with
like,
old versions.
Yeah, and that's not too Mudsword, but 13th Age, when you have backgrounds, wizards can have cool backgrounds and they can add to the story. They can discover things. They can figure stuff out. Your wizard Katama in Mudsword has got some background points, and he's able to infer things and figure things out that can help the party.
As long as those elements are in play in the current scenario.
Right.
So if we had been, so the one adventure, we were in a witch's tower essentially.
Yeah.
So he didn't necessarily need to cast spells all the time for him to be useful.
Right.
But let's say they were instead scoping out
Ogre's Lair.
an ogre's lair.
Orcs guarding it. Yeah.
Yeah, just big lugs with clubs. Now once they start charging him, he can cast his sleep and get a lot of the orcs, and probably not one of the ogres. I think they're higher than 4 hit dice, or they might be at the very limit. I remember that being around there. You're muted.
4 + 3 or 4. I think it was 4 + 3 or 4 hit dice was right for an ogre.
Oh, okay. So you might be able to get an ogre with a first level sleep spell at first level if you're lucky.
Right.
So so you would get your 1 spell, and the rest of it you'd be hiding.
And if you don't, somebody's going to die.
Right.
I do like games that if the wizard can't be casting spells all the time, to have him have a role in the group that creates a tangible effect on the game without it being related to magic. Being a lore master is one such way, especially if your DM involves a lot of things to do with game lore,
Mhm.
like oh, there's a magic lock on this door. It's like, okay, well, we don't have access to a knock spell. If the door has like some sort of magical password or a puzzle in which you have to supply an answer for as like a lore master, there you've just helped open the door without the use of spells and had it some tangible effect on the game. Thank you, dear.
I think it would be interesting if well, you call cantrips, don't you? I was looking, I believe that came into play in second edition.
Yeah,
A
sometime
cantrip-
along the line.
A cantrip spell, not
Yeah.
cantrips. It was 0 level spells in third edition. I think a wizard, I'm okay if a wizard can do some sort of minor magic trick at pretty much any time, just as long as it's not like, damaging. I never like damaging cantrips. I don't like cantrips should
Like
be-
having the old cantrip spell
Yes.
be usable at will.
That's cross.
I'd be cool with that too. That'd be nice.
That's
I love prestidigitation. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Clean. I clean myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, did you notice AD&D 1E brought the hit dice though quite a bit to 11?
Yeah, still D4s though.
Joe, you're a wizard. You don't need hit points, dude. Come on.
No. One hit
What's
point
that?
is more than enough.
That's what I thought. But there does seem to be a 20th level implied cap, stuff, 9th level spells. Not much changes between 1 and 2E though.
Except for the damage caps.
The damage caps do come in.
Now,
Yep.
what was okay? I don't remember specifically what the damage cap. I know third edition had a different one. from
I'm
second.
pretty sure for Fireball it was 10d6, and Magic Missile was 5. I'm
in
pretty sure.
in second edition,
I'm almost positive.
because that's third edition.
Right.
It's
I'm
every
all-
it's like every spell level is another 5 damage dice. Something, or every other.
Total of 5 at 9th level in second edition for Magic Missile. Could have 5. And for Fireball, I'm almost positive it was 10 because you got really been out of shape. You did not like that at all.
Mm-mm.
And I can't say that I really blame you because it's kind of cheeseballish.
Well, because TSR became Screw the Wizard.
Well,
Screw the Wizard, screw the wizard.
You know,
I mean,
truthfully,
it was
Gygax
almost all the time.
he didn't care for the wizard, truthfully. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
right.
10d6 for a
Yeah,
Fireball.
yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I admire the man, not liking the wizard, oh, Gygax, you break my heart.
Killing you. Is he killing you, Patrick?
Killing me, Smalls.
Yeah,
Well,
he was.
In a lot of pulp fantasy from back in the day, the wizards were the bad guys
Yeah.
a lot of the time. You
Oh,
usually
wow.
didn't usually have wizard good guys.
I mean, look at Conan. They had plenty of wizards in Conan. 99% of them were bad guys, and Conan had like one wizard buddy.
Guess what Delayed Blast did in damage in second edition?
1 extra point per die.
Correct. So 10d6 plus 10. Granted, you could time it out, but
It
For a
became
seventh
like a
level
magic
spell-
grenade. I
for a
thought it was a
seventh level-
waste.
for a 7th level spell, it was poop.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you're going to do, just let the wizards modify Fireball. They did have specialist wizards in the second, which I'm looking at. They gave them 15% bonus to learn spells from their school, minus 15 learning others, +1 to saves versus their school, because you had opposition schools too, and you got a penalty of -1 your saves versus others.
I never cared for the school specialization. I would have rather
Thinking
them
they
just
were
had a
weak.
discrete necromancer class, like they had the illusionist. They should have
Yeah.
never got rid of that if they wanted illusion as like a specialty. I don't know why they restructured that. They should have just had a illusionist, a necromancer, and a couple of others that were off the top of my head, I'm not really sure there's too many more that I can think
Yeah.
of that aren't like more Pathfinder sounding or whatever. But
I didn't care for the Abjure and the Evoker and all that stuff. That was not.
that's clunky naming too. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're going to have a wizard, like a fire mage is pretty iconic. So you could have something like that and have one for each of the primary elements. And shape changing is pretty iconic for wizards too in certain, novels. So you could have something that a wizard be like that, but having, what were they, 9? Were there 9 specialty wizards?
I want to say, I think there were 7. Might have
7 or
been.
9, something like that.
There were 9 schools. I think it was
9
9
schools.
schools. Yeah.
9 schools. And there was always a clunky way to try to have a generalist.
8 in second edition.
Hmm.
8 in second.
8, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never liked any of that. I thought it was poorly done.
I know some of us here don't like 5th edition that much, but one thing I did like in 5th edition. One thing I did like.
I don't know, Joe. I'm not sure now because you guys have different. Patrick's to my left and you're down below.
I'm on top right now.
You are. You're on top. You're the king. Sorry, Patrick. Go, bud. I interrupted you.
One thing I did like about 5th edition is how they handled specialist wizards. They did a little bit of it out of Unearthed Arcana for 3rd edition. Is they made different types of specialist wizards, and instead of just giving them the bonuses to learn spells or the extra spell slots, they also gave them actual themed powers. Like the necromancer was much better at raising dead than standard mage, and they ported that over for like 5th edition, kind of polished it up, because even the diviner has some pretty snazzy abilities.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, okay. An oracle or diviner is iconic. In previous editions, the diviner's abilities were always pretty yawny, except for they always had, well, not always, but in 3rd edition, the only real good ability I think they had was the initiative bonus.
Better level.
Yeah. So
there's also the conjurer. That's a summoner,
right.
Which I'm not a big fan of summoning in general in D&D.
One of my favorite abilities of the diviner from 5th edition is his ability that he gets, that he rolls like a couple of d20s. He records those rolls, and then if you have like a really high roll and you flub a roll, you could replace that one flubbed roll with one of your high rolls. Or if you have a monster that you really need to miss and you rolled a low die with your other die, you could replace the monster's roll with that low die.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a neat ability.
The 2nd edition didn't do much with it. I thought the specialists were kind of weird and weak.
Mm-hmm.
And the level caps. And I liked 2nd when it came out. Remember, we did that Dragon magazine. Our group sat down, Patrick and me and John and buddies, and we filled out that survey, over 100 questions, a paper survey that we sent in back in the day in 89 or whatever it was, 88. And I liked 2nd when it first came out. I loved all the box sets, and initially I thought Joe was just, he was whining about the wizard, but
I was.
Truth is, I think you're right though. I think
I was right, but also whining.
Well, the wizard kind of kept getting nerfed, and especially in 2nd, and then if we're ready, 3rd edition, I think things changed drastically.
Well, yeah, and in some weird other ways. So in 3rd edition, wizards got a bunch of 0 level spells.
Yep.
They got to add their intelligence modifier, or no, their intelligence modifier affected the number of spells that they could memorize. Also, it affected their resistance roll for their spells, right? That's when they started doing that in 3rd edition.
And I think that's one of the things that quickly, if they're fighting monsters, got out of hand.
Well, right. 3rd edition started the whole lots of moving parts issue that 3rd edition had. All your stats had game effects in various different kinds of ways. And sometimes you could segue many of them into one thing and really blow the roll out of the water, which is kind of not great. But right. So
Feats.
I liked initially how wizards were treated as far as the getting the bump with their intelligence, because I always thought that was dumb that clerics got more spells out of a high wisdom, wizards didn't. But
Agreed.
Yeah,
Always hated that.
But there were, again, lots of moving parts. You had feats, and you can I think 3.0, the way the meta magic feats worked with spells, made it kind of made you not want to use them.
Many of them, yes.
Many of them, because they added a bunch of levels to your spells, and you hardly ever got a chance to use them, even if it was like quicken spell. That was really the only one that was worth using, I thought.
Third edition, I really liked what, again, our Arcana Unearthed did with an optional rule for meta magic. Meta magic, whenever you took it as a feat, you got a number of times per day that you could apply that meta magic feat to a spell. And like if you wanted quicken more than just once per day, you'd have to take the feat again.
Yeah.
But
I think it was 3
you
times.
could just choose on the fly. It's like, okay, I want this quickened, and it would just add quickened, and it wouldn't adjust the level or anything. I like that much better.
There were still some spells, like I know our buddy Philip used, not Enlarge. What's the one that's not Maximize, but it's 50% more?
Empower.
That seemed to be the one that was worth it, because he would prepare empowered spells. If you're a really high level wizard, if you're a 20th level mage, then you definitely could empower Fireball. You could maximize and empower Fireball, and it would probably be worth a 6th level slot, because you would do great damage. Or you could do what was the one where you could transmute the elemental type and make it an electricity ball, or make it an acid ball.
Right.
I thought that was an Archmage ability.
It was probably in 3E, but in 3X it became a feat.
Energy. Add mixture.
Yeah, add mixture. Dude, there were so many feats. It was like, and that's why I said that the wizard was kind of like, he was a god, and you had ability score improvements, which means if you didn't have the 18 intelligence, you could afford to be at 16 at first. By the time you got to 8th level, you knew you would have an 18, possibly higher if you got a headband of ability boosting, which and all that affected the DCs. A wizard focused on making your saving throws hard could do it. Didn't Pathfinder and 3rd edition also make it to where really damaging spells became kind of poopy? Because
it seemed always to be the lesser choice. If you're going to build your 3rd edition or Pathfinder wizard, you're better off trying to throw effects around, or crowd control, or something like that, instead of direct damage, because the the combatant classes like fighter and whatnot, they were much better at dealing out damage.
Well, and taking it, because even the wizard, there was no hit die caps.
Right.
But 20th level wizard had, granted it was D4s, but he had 20 D4.
Right.
And if he got a constitution buff or belt, which he might at 20th level, he might have a halfway decent con +2. He could have decent hit points, and the fighter and barbarian would have stupid hit points. I mean, into the 300s.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, fireballs aren't helping you at 10d6, even at whatever it was, 10d6, or
even if you maximize
I think that's what artificially that's what artificially pushed down wizards as far as their power, is just how ridiculous hit points could get. Like 5th edition, your main resource in that game is hit points, and it really is just a hit point game.
Just whittling away at them.
Your ability to deal out X number of damage directly affects your usefulness or how powerful you feel. And it used to be where a wizard could walk in and there'd be an army of orcs, and one fireball would take out like half the orc army. And although the wizard's like, okay, that was my only one, I only got one, but I took out half the army for you.
Right.
Yeah.
But now in Pathfinder, it's like, well, those orcs have fighter levels, so you may not drop any of them.
Right.
Well,
So
and
your better bet would be confusion and slow combo.
Yep.
And then you just screwed the whole thing.
slow was complete screw.
Oh, you use both. You do both. And that just,
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember I complained at the end. It was like, and when they added those stupid feats where like you can now add your wisdom modifier to reflex saves. Or you
Right,
can
right.
now add your con modifier to will saves. You know, you could be a fighter who had great saves versus mental spells, or, and again, I always thought from the monster's perspective, you could build wizards where my monsters could not save against your spells. I mean, or if I could, I'd roll 18, 19, 20 on the die.
Right.
Even tough monsters. And you would obliterate spell resistance and high level.
Mhm.
There was no good. I mean, by the book, monsters quickly got outstripped. And I think that was that's a more general thing. But wizards could focus on things other than damage and still be called. You know, that's where I heard the term first, God Wizard. I mean, the wizard in third edition he was a king, undoubtedly. Once you got to high level, actually mid levels, maybe even like seventh or eighth level.
Right.
If you built him to control the battlefield, to stun people, to slow people, he was a boss, dude.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't do damage, but
No, you
it's
couldn't.
not the optimal route, I think. The optimal route is controlling or doing other things than damage. Though you can still do it and it's okay. You soften up the enemies and then your pals go in and wipe them up, potentially.
And we'd be remiss to not add in 3.0, haste was the best spell.
Oh yeah.
Period.
Yep.
Period. Stop. 9th level, 8th level. I don't care. 20th level, 16th level. You want to have haste.
Yeah.
Because the wizard gets to cast 2 spells around.
Yep.
He could go no.
The only thing I'd argue that beat that is time stop.
Yeah, but if you got haste, you can do time stop and something else.
Right.
True.
I'm just saying 3rd level. As soon as you hit 5th level, every wizard took haste. If you didn't, you're dumb. And then from then on, you're the king. Now 3.5, when they didn't let the wizard benefit as much from haste, besides reflex saves, then it became haste your party, haste your fighter. And you got 8th level fighter, 2-weapon fighter, or a great sword wielder attacking 4 times around, killing everything.
And
Turbo Gensu.
And then you could quicken a haste and cast 2 spells, right? Because you've quickened it. And now you have 2 full actions. You could potentially cast 3 spells that round.
Yes, you could.
So you could quicken a haste, time stop. And what's time stop again? Let's do twice.
Yeah. Put time stop on this part of the battlefield. You had to be in it. So probably what you'd want to do is probably do something like Horde Wilting, followed by time stop. So you can play, and then you can summon a buttload of, monster summoning 9s or whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Cast time stop twice. It actually reverses time.
Permanently. Yeah. So 3rd edition changed things. Now we had a heck of a time playing it. I mean, as far as
it was fun at the time.
I had fun level 10. If it was 1 to 10, I had fun level 10. 3rd edition, 2nd edition, 1st edition. Not so much the earlies didn't play it enough to give it that much fun, probably 5 or 6. But would you say you enjoyed a lot 3rd edition?
Yeah.
Patrick?
Yep. It was a new way to play, and I had been so afraid that since it was bought by Wizards of the Coast, I thought they were just going to make Magic the Gathering the role-playing game, and I really didn't want that.
Right.
And it's like, oh no, I'm looking at everything on here, and I'm still recognizing it as Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, they did away with Thaco. They made it
Ascending.
one step easier to do everything. And wow, with descending armor class, you have some hard caps on how high your armor class can go and how it can affect the game. Whereas with this open-ended ascending armor class, you could break the game, shoot for the stars with that, because there are some people that could have some stupid combinations and not be able to be hit by anything.
I remember in 3.0, the wizard could get the best armor class at 20th level because I had a player do it. He played a wizard in 3.0 and he had the best armor class in the group. when he got his spells going, which I thought, like, why do you even need that? I remember Joe played in 3.5. Joe didn't care about armor class at all for his wizard.
I tried that.
Yeah.
And then I backed down to just making sure it having a mage armor up, and then having the option to have shield and maybe one other thing. You wanted to have some armor protection just in case, but most of the time, if you played right, you didn't have to worry about it. You know.
And with like 3.0 and like Pathfinder and the like, at even mid levels, armor class becomes relatively useless unless you're focusing on it. It becomes relatively useless because everything has like plus 20 to hit you in the first place, and you're never going to push your armor class that high unless, like I said, you focus completely on your armor class.
I think you could build with the Pathfinder and the Mythic tier. Jeff built a monk that had a stupid armor class. That was very hard.
I remember that.
For anybody, but that's kind of a perfect storm. Like, here's all the money to buy all the gear you want. You get to cherry pick it, and if you ran a not dynamic, what's the word that Joe loves, an organic campaign, it's highly unlikely.
That's a marketing term.
We're using it here, Joe. And so if you ran a regular sort of campaign, it's highly unlikely that you would have that unless you play where, like we did for a while, where basically you sell your gear, get the money back, buy your new gear that you wanted, and it makes just a boring economy, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Mudsword's player companion has to be called Organic Campaigns, Farming Your Players.
Yes. Must include the word organic somewhere in there, if not multiple places. But
that was a big paradigm shift from second to third.
Yeah, it was. And I think the biggest thing was the feats, but they did modify a lot of the spells too for the wizard. I mean, honestly, letting them, continue their hit dice up to 20th level, not a big deal.
Not for the wizard, but for the warriors it was.
Right, but not for the wizard. It didn't really matter a whole lot. It was more some particular spell additions and changes. Haste really being a big one.
Yeah.
For good or for ill, third edition really opened up options for every single class. You could make 40 different types of unique fighters out of the bunch, whereas in previous editions, a 10th level fighter, what a 10th level fighter can do because they all do the same thing.
Short of gear.
Other than like
magic gear.
Choice.
And magic gear.
Yeah.
Right.
We used to say magic made the man in first and second.
Yeah.
Kind of did.
It did. Yeah. I think in
build game was significant in third.
I think in third edition, the build game, the magic item stuff. I think the magic item stuff really just accentuated certain numbers, right? Instead of a lot of the magic items being unique and cool, it was just a big numbers game.
You know what I wish magic items would do more often in role-playing games? I think the Doctor Strange movie, when he got the Eye of Agamotto, once he learned how to use it, it gave him a brand new power that he never had before, that he only had access while he had the Eye of Agamotto. See, that's the kind of stuff I wish magic items would do, not just boost your numbers.
Yeah, me too. And for the record, having the green, what were the gems called?
The Infinity Stones?
Yeah, the Infinity Stone. In that, and then him giving it up, and then the Eye of Agamotto was no more. Dumb move, Marvel. I don't know if it got fixed. I haven't seen the last in that installment, so I don't know if that he ended up getting the eye back. But that's very iconic for Doctor Strange. And if it's forever gone, it's the forever stupid move on Marvel's part.
I don't disagree.
I mean, Doctor Strange had a few magic items which were very, very iconic to his character.
Mhm.
The Eye of Agamotto being like his chief one, but then there's the Cloak of Levitation.
Mhm.
I can't remember what the axe was called. The Wand of Watun, and
That one, I mean, I read a lot of Doctor Strange. The eye and the cloak were the big two. And he also
Yep.
had a crystal ball. I can't remember the name of it. He it had its own dimension world inside of it.
it wasn't the Eye of Vishanti, was it?
It might have been because he sent, what was that priest turned sorcerer that always tried to kill him?
Um, not Mandrake.
Mm-mm.
No.
Not the
We're
M
not
word.
talking about Baron Mordo, are we?
Not Mordo. No, this is a different guy.
Can't recall.
Anyway,
Didn't read a lot of Strange.
there was a Catholic priest who discovered a secret cache of arcane things in the Vatican and just studied them and decided he was going to go around killing people,
Okay.
killing
Wait.
other, magic users, like Doctor Strange, because of course, they're bad, even though he
Marvel's
used the same
wokeness
stuff.
started early, I see.
Well, and so Doctor Strange sent him into that crystal ball as a defense. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Okay.
Trapped him. Anyway, so speaking of magic items, you have listed here, Mr. Randy.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought you were
Yeah.
pointing out the making of magic items for a particular version of D&D.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, magic item creation became a thing in third edition. Not that it wasn't before, but
It was really spelled out.
it was formalized.
Mm.
And
It was formalized and it sucked.
yes, at 3.0 was super
hated
suck.
it.
3.0 was super suck because you had to spend experience points.
Yeah.
That was my problem.
But 3.5 was not like that, right?
I don't think so.
No, I think it's Pathfinder that took out the experience point requirement.
It's one of the two, for sure. But yeah, the experience point thing, I never liked that.
I remember in AD&D, you gained experience points for making magic items,
Mhm.
which I think you should. I think the process should just be a little more arduous than just spend gold, get item.
Patrick's right. In
Yeah.
3.5, you did have to spend experience points.
Yeah, I think
Because I mean, if you're like the crafter for your party and your war, you want your warrior to have a powerful magic sword. It's like, well, wizard, make one for me. Certainly. Okay, I'm footing the entire bill for this, which includes the experience point cost. So now you're a drain on me here, warrior.
I think the superior way of doing that is once you get to name level, like in the older versions, like ninth level or 11th level, you attract a bunch of folks, and then you train up a few people and they become your crafters because you're adventuring. Do you really have time, especially if you go away from third edition? Third edition, it didn't take that long to make a lot of magic items.
Right.
But in older editions, it was really open-ended. The DM could say, set all the parameters. So if the DM said, okay, you must spend 1 year in intense inventor mode, not only making, part of that's making it, part of that's researching it, part of that's gathering materials and whatnot. How often do you have a whole year to take off apart? I mean, because you're already doing other things that distract you as a high level adventurer. You might need to do some training on your own to gain your next level. There might be all kinds of other things going on, and then a whole year. It's probably better
Personally,
to.
I like baking magic item creation into the campaign itself. If you're not gonna attract a bunch of followers to train to craft magic potions and shit, one thing I would do is I'd probably lower the amount of time it takes to make potions, or I would have it baked into the campaign where it's like, well, I need this special ingredient and we're going to need to oh, so we're going, towards the dragon's cave. Great. Outside of Dragon Cave, I can get these types of flowers grow, and I need them for potions. And once I have those, that's the last ingredient I need to put into the potions. Or if we're going to make a magic sword for the warrior, it's like, okay, first we need to forge a mastercraft blade. We'll have a blacksmith do that. But now I need a dragon's eye gem, from a red dragon's hoard. And once we get that, we'll put the gem in. And, now I need this special spell that's in this lich's magic book.
You can break up
once
the
I've used the spell
crafting.
on that, it'll become the magic item. And we just had like 4 different adventures.
Right. That's probably
Just
the
making
superior
this
way to do it instead of just cha-ching, money exchanges hands, and you have magic item. Yeah.
Which
That's
is
much
like,
superior.
which is I've found how a lot of people like doing it, but I
That's the way we did it back in the day. If
Ugh.
Randy ever made anything for us ever, that's how it went.
Ugh,
That's how
I
it
hate
went.
that. I hate that.
What's that? What's that, Joe?
I said, if you ever let us do that in the first place, it was something arduous. Most of the time it's like, you can't make that.
Right.
You can't
And,
make
well,
that.
well, right. I think
But
I
now
prefer that.
you had good reason.
Well,
It was usually because you didn't want us to get too powerful.
well, I didn't like third edition. I hated crap.
This is previous. So in
Correct,
previous
correct.
play before third edition, that's how it happened. We would either find somebody that could make it, and then we would go on adventures to gather stuff, or you might let somebody in the party make something, but it still involved adventuring. So
Right. And I think I prefer the idea. I mean, what if you married crafting for a wizard in with their training? To get to 9th level, you can't attain 17th level spell. You can't attain 17th level until you create a magic item. Because maybe there's a process in that the book, the secrets in the books, the magic books said, look, you won't understand 9th level spells till you create something perfect.
That's good.
Ars
I like that.
Magica had a big part of the game was crafting magic items, because they're not like magic items of like 3rd edition. Even consumable magic items in Ars Magica, those are a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you create a potion that does something, it does something game breaking. And potions took a long time to make. They almost supplanted your wizard studies. Then Earth Dawn, I know, to attain certain levels you actually have to perform special rituals to attain higher levels, and they're usually really elaborate. I can't remember. I think one might even be that you have to craft a special item to be able to gain further access to higher circles. I know in Ars Magica, one of the big things you can make in there that enhances your power is either binding yourself to a familiar, which is way more powerful than like D&D's familiars, or making your talisman, which is like the Magister staff from our Unearthed Arcana would be an example of your talisman. But you'd constantly be imbuing it with new abilities and new functionality and stuff. But it was part of your progression.
Yeah, like I said, I was never fond of. I love the idea now of wizards making, and I like the idea of different options. Like I could imagine Patrick playing a wizard that does that in D&D. He creates this cool stuff that's his talisman, and Joe decides, in either another campaign or playing a wizard some other time, he's like, you know what? I would like to be able to become in the city of Greyhawk. I like to be able to become the wizard that sells potions. So I'm going to train a bunch of 5th and 6th level wizards to make potions, and that's going to take time. And once they master it, I can create so many a month and I can sell them. He can make, that could be a unique thing in this one town that Joe's wizard does. Not every wizard does.
Right.
And so I think it would be cool if wizards players in our game and Mudsword 2 try to do something unique. And I think I made a note on that, having to do certain things to access the next level, so training can be more interesting and maybe even get something out of it besides just a level and a few hit points.
Right. I had been
the magic shop done organically.
Yeah.
well, personally, I think there should be more herbalism type things in the game that don't necessarily require a lot of magic to produce. So you can make ointments and unguents and other things out of just herbs and whatever else, right? Because that exists in the real world, and it can be amped up a little bit in a fantasy world, because in Fantasyland there's special plants that talk to you maybe, or whatever. So
Right.
you can make that would be one thing you could add to a wizard or druid. That might even be more druidic.
I keep bringing up Ars Magica, but they do have that in there.
Right.
Herbalism as like a separate talent from like potion making.
Mm-hmm.
As potion making, you can make potions do anything that a spell can do, whereas herbalism, depending on what tier of herbals or potions you want to make, with herbalism, it spells out its effects like very succinctly. Like, this is you could with this level of talent, you can make a potion or a poison that does X amount of damage, or you can boost a chosen stat by like +1 or +2, or you can force the person to do a healing check and maybe get rid of X type of wounds and stuff like that. But a lot of that was boiled into an herbalism skill, which was actually different from alchemy, and alchemy was actually different from potion making.
Well, right. So I'm picturing it not precisely like Harry Potter. The in the school they had the nurse's office in the movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Harry Potter, not that cartoonish, but along those lines. So your herbal potions or unguents or whatever.
Oh, there was a 3rd edition setting that did just that. It was Midnight.
Oh,
Midnight had a whole section on herbalism.
Well, you needed that because if you cast spells, someone would hunt you down and kill you.
Yeah.
Many someones. So
yes.
yeah. But it's also useful in especially low level games where you don't have a lot of access to spells. And if you have a local herbalist or hedge wizard or someone a healer lady in town, maybe in your village, I imagine many villages having somebody there who can slap a poultice together. So you can,
and I think, yeah.
So I think that's something that would add a lot to, but that's more playing in the mud.
Yeah.
But in 3rd edition,
and to normal peasantry, what's the difference between making magic potions and putting together an herbal poultice? In the common man's eye, that's the same thing.
It could be, and depending on how much you emulate a medieval style campaign as opposed to something more swords and sorcery, heavy metal type game. But yeah, the more insular and backward hickish the folks are, the more
superstitious and stuff. Yeah.
So 3rd edition, that with magic items, kind of made them more accessible but less desirable at the same time.
Well,
in a lot of ways.
They just made them an economy, and a lot of people that, at least on the boards you would read about, they did a lot of just talking about buying magic items left and right, and I'm like,
but what magic items make the character? I mean, what's the character?
Yeah, it cheapened it to a large degree.
Yeah, I think that needs to be out of the player's hands mostly. but wizards could do some stuff.
Yeah, and then you had a bunch of folks walking around with Vorpal swords when they're probably for any given world or dimension, there should be just one, the Vorpal sword.
It would make sense. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Now, I have a Vorpal sword. What? You have the Vorpal sword? The.
Congratulations. You have
Yeah. Like
All
Butch. Butch, he has the Vorpal sword. No matter what table he goes to, it's the. Anyway, so magic items,
feats, ability
feats.
boosts.
Yeah, all that stuff really, I don't know. For the wizard, this is what ability boosting did for the wizard. Two things. It made their spells harder to cast, harder to resist, and let them have more spells, because they all your other stats withered and died, except for maybe Constitution. The rest of them didn't matter. So
third edition, you kind of needed it.
Yeah. So in third edition, you just boosted that intelligence way up. You made your spells really hard to resist if you cast those kinds of spells. If you're a controller, or if you're more into crowd control, and it's not as necessary. But then number of spells, you could get your number of spells way up there.
Yeah, you could.
With a high stat.
Oh, not to mention if you got the rings of wizardry, where you could double the level spells.
Yeah, but that's another. So third edition giveth and they taketh away. So in first and second edition, the ring of wizardry boosted all first through fourth level spells. In third edition, you had to get 4 different rings, and you could only wear two.
Right. There's one last thing I want to focus on third edition before we leave the topic of third. When I first learned this, I remember distinctly talking to Joe. He was living in DC, and I couldn't wrap my mind around this stupid 5-foot step.
Right.
So the wizard could, if some creature came up on a wizard, if they didn't have reach, they could 5-foot step and cast their spell. And it was really hard coming from previous TSR era edition D&D, where if a wizard tried to cast a spell and someone was on them, they automatically got a chance to just slap them. The way that some of the rules worked, it was like, basically, if you're in melee with someone, you try to cast a spell, they can disrupt it basically for free, and you would lose it. Whereas in third edition, now the wizard could do a couple of things. I think it was in 3.5 when you can make concentration checks. Oh, combat casting was a feat.
Combat casting,
which gave you a bonus to concentration checks. You could literally be fighting a creature and go, ooh, magic missile right in his face. As long as you make a concentration check, he couldn't even attack you. He couldn't get his attack of opportunity. He couldn't push you. He couldn't disrupt it. Or if he did hit you, if you got hit while casting, you'd make a concentration check. And but granted, it was really hard. It was something like the DC was 10 plus damage dealt, or half the damage dealt or something. But it was really hard for me to wrap that kind of combat ability of the wizard in my mind, switching.
There's a reason why it was hard. And looking at Rule Cyclopedia description of casting spells was, you stand still while you're casting your spell. You can't move. You can do nothing else but cast your spell. Right. In later editions, it was, just flip, blip, 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 and you could just be, like you're saying, up in someone's grill and cast a spell, and it doesn't matter. But in other editions, in earlier editions, you had to stand still. And if all someone had to do, like you said, is push you, your spell was lost, or you didn't get to cast your spell, and the slot was lost.
And a round was a minute in TSR era D&D, where it was 6 seconds in third edition. Right.
So the old way of thinking, and it's still around, but not as prevalent because of the shorter round, is when you're in combat, you're not standing in one spot. You're shuffling your feet. You're jockeying for position. You're dodging and weaving and all this other stuff. The way Max over at Legion of Myth puts it, it's a scrum. So everybody's it's a free for all. So you're not standing there until you start casting a spell, and then you're just standing there.
Yeah.
And so in that, it's like on a football field, when the quarterback goes hike, everybody goes at each other. So that's D&D combat. Everybody's going at each other. It's constant movement until the wizard makes himself a target by stopping, casting his spell, and speaking his words. And depending on which version you were talking, some versions of D&D, it doesn't say specifically like how loud you're supposed to be talking or whatever, but third edition it does.
Yep.
You're supposed to be speaking clearly, and then that mainly because they have a feat that you can take to negate that. So
silent spell, still spell.
In earlier versions, it just says say words, so you could still like whisper them, and it's still saying them.
And I believe the Vancian connection hit was different. I believe the description in third edition was when a wizard prepares his spells, memorizes them, he prepares them to be cast. So it's like you prepare Fireball, you all but cast it.
Yeah.
It's ready to be cast.
Needs the final couple of words to
right. In the BECMI, the way they do it is, the way they describe it is, you once you have prepared the spell, it has set patterns in your mind that when you go to cast it, those patterns are released. So you don't all but cast it and leave one or two syllables left to go.
Right.
You still, in older versions, you do all the casting. The memorization part is to set the mystic patterns and runes or whatever in your mind.
Right.
So it's a different paradigm. In third edition, you just do everything except for the last couple words. Right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that caused us, I think initially I was like, that seems too powerful. Wizards seem unstoppable. And in the end, that's kind of true. I mean, in third edition for sure, you can mostly build a wizard who's the king.
Yeah.
So
combat casting to me evokes a lot of images of Gandalf, where he was able to throw down in melee combat and still use magic. I think mainly of the fight with the Balrog.
Yeah.
So
he definitely had combat casting there. Otherwise,
so
Balrog would have eliminated that shield spell instantly.
Right. I think the combat casting, if you did it right, would be more like quicken spell. So if you had the combat casting feature in this imaginary version of the game, instead of it just giving you a bonus, which everything in third edition just gave you a bonus, it would allow you for maybe that round to fight and cast.
Interestingly enough, I keep bringing up Ars Magica again, but they actually had hard rules of gesticulations and incantations for spells. The standard was to have visible gestures and a firm voice for casting spells. That was the baseline for spell casting. However, if you shouted your spells and gesticulated wildly, you actually got a bonus to spell casting. And if you did more subtle gestures or whispered your spells, you'd start getting spell casting penalties.
Because you had to make a roll you have to make a roll to get your spell off in Ars Magica.
Yep. And if you did no incantation and no gestures, the penalty was gigantic, but you could still do it.
That reminds me what Max had said. I think, and you can help me, Patrick, because Max is a big fan of Earth Dawn. And I believe he talked about some of the weird description of the spells in Earth Dawn, how they describe what the wizard was doing. What was the one?
We had a whole conversation about this down in my basement.
Oh,
about
did we?
The stupid shit that wizards have to do.
Jumping like around the rabbit. Was that it? Okay. Thought Max.
Yeah, if you want to cast haste on somebody, you got to run around in a circle like an idiot and then touch your target. The fly spell actually requires you to like flap your arms and shit.
First edition web spell, you have to eat a spider.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Patrick the wizard would never be able to cast web or spider climb.
So interesting. I was looking at web, and I thought I had typoed it in the document that I made for you, Randy.
Yeah.
because it said 48 turns.
Right.
No, it's 48 turns in the book.
Well, I guess it's kind of a permanent web, right? So it just blops out there and it doesn't go till someone tears it away.
Well, essentially, I mean, 48 turns is 480 minutes, right? Is that
80,
right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
I don't know what edition or what game it was, but I remember one version of the game where you could actually set a web on fire with a spell, and it would damage everybody who was caught in it.
That's the BECMI version, and I think first and second edition as well. It's not a lot of damage, but it's some. I mean,
it's a little extra damage boost when you fireball the web.
Sure thing. Get an extra die, maybe
2d4 damage in second edition. Correct. Oh,
I don't think it's that in third, but
yeah,
there in third edition there were some spells that got a boost and some spells that, I mean, it cycles that way. It depends on probably the designers that like certain spells from their own mind or from old D&D, and I like this spell, so I'm gonna feature this spell by making it good. And then some designer decides, I hate that spell. Let's screw with it. That's what it seems like. Because sometimes spell ever. I mean, I'm pretty sure in third edition, sleep only affects one target, and they get a saving throw.
Right.
So that made it a poopy first level spell. Yeah. I think though the hit die limit might have gone up, but still, that's very drastic change. Yeah. But the other thing is about that is it's a different gameplay experience when you're a bit more squishy. I mean, imagine that squishy wizard, more squishy than third edition wizard, because they got a bump in hit die. They went up to D. No, do they still have D4s?
I think D6 was Pathfinder.
Yeah, D6 is Pathfinder. Right. But in third edition, it was easier to get a con bonus on your hit points. Much easier.
Yeah.
I think in BECMI, and definitely first and second edition, you had to have a 16 con before you got a bonus.
And I think in Wizard,
and max you can get bonuses +2.
Yeah.
In third edition, you could have as much. I mean, if you pumped your con, you could have 4 or 5, depending on how you made your character. But
I help look it up, but my office has all my board games. All the role-playing games are down in the game room in the basement.
Right. Okay.
That's cool. But anyway, it's a different feel. I think in the older editions was hide, bide your time, do what you could with your spells at low level. The way Heathen Dog over at Legion of Myth puts it is the wizard is an investment. So you keep him, you get one, you protect him until he gets a few levels under his belt, and then he can become because every once in a while, even at the low levels, he can blast out something like a sleep or whatever, throw down a web and everybody run, because you're not getting out of a web anytime soon.
No.
In earlier editions, not. It's very
Get your wizard up to 5th level, and it's an investment well worth it.
Yes.
And in third edition, giants would just rip through your webs easy. You couldn't hold a giant.
And so, but in third edition, they tried to even out the classes.
Yes.
So what balanced that in older editions is every class has a different experience point chart. And wizards, I think, had the most difficult.
Them are the paladins, depending on what edition.
Correct. So, and even though it didn't make sense because the wizards were weaker at low level, but needed more experience to go up, it paid off later on. In third edition, everybody had the same experience point chart, and they tried but failed to balance the classes, which I think is a bad idea anyway, because how can you really do it? It's hard to balance disparate abilities and say this ability is equal to that ability, but they do different things. So
I think they balanced the game once and only once, and that was 4th edition, and everybody did the same shit.
I think 13th Age took the D20 D&D paradigm and changed it. It's not D&D, but
No.
they gave a good account of themselves in balancing everything. However, in my opinion, it's not as boring as 4th edition.
No,
I think, at least not on paper, because 4th
No.
edition bored me just reading it. But our 13th Age makes things not necessarily boring, but definitely predictable, which you might like.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's advantages to it. I mean, 13th
Yes.
has some nice. I do like 13th Age, but it is definitely a balanced approach. 4th edition, as I mentioned in the outline, powers and stuff, we didn't play it much.
No,
I played
I
a
can't
couple
really
of
speak about
times.
it.
I've never run an adventure. They had at will dailies and what was the
Encounter powers.
Encounter powers, yeah. I think I played a couple of little adventures, mostly
Same here.
sessions. Yeah, it wasn't my bag, and I can't speak intelligently to 4th edition wizard. I have no idea.
But
It's like, and even your higher level abilities, it's like you can look at like the wizard spells in there. It's like, oh, flame blast deals 1d8 plus intelligence damage to this area. Then you look at fireball. Oh, it deals 3d8 plus your intelligence damage and fire damage to an area. And then like the super duper like mega ultra fire blast spell does 5d8 plus intelligence damage to a wide area. And it's like, oh my god, this is the same spell, just bumped up like a couple of times, just given
Yeah.
a couple extra dice.
what I
I did
don't,
some
And
really
then the really disparaging thing is that, oh, look at the ranger. Oh, he has an ability that basically does the same thing except with a different element. Oh, the fighter has a healing ability. Oh, this character has a healing ability. Oh, this one has a crowd control ability. Oh, this one has another 40 crowd control abilities. It's like everybody, I mean, yes, if you break them, boil them down to their essential parts, they all play differently, but it's like everybody has a ranged attack ability. Everybody has an area effect ability. Everybody has a crowd control ability. Everybody has a healing ability. And, you know, it's like everybody becomes samey, and all
Mhm.
these abilities, which were, I think, called exploits for like fighters and all that stuff, they're just spells with different names.
it was the only version of D&D, like Joe said, and I was the same way. I couldn't get to the player's handbook. It bored me to death. I have read the player's handbook for every version of D&D except that.
I mean, the fighters flying two-handed dick slap is just the non-elemental version of a wizard's fireball.
I did some really poor research, quick look this today when I was giving a test, which by the way is my last day of the week because Thanksgiving's up and teaching college rocks. So I'm off till Monday of next week. It's really cool. Making Joe jealous. And anyway, I was looked, there were tiers, you know how that people talk about since 3rd edition, I'm probably before, they talked about, you know, the wizard was the upper tier, and
Right.
was, you know, they would tier these classes up, meaning they're the best class. Next best class was a cleric, or however you ranked them, depending on the game in the build, and especially with the build game that became a thing. And I looked at 4th edition. Someone said, I saw a Reddit thing. What are the tiers for the 4th edition characters? And they were like, they had them ranked, but it wasn't really clear. It was not clear as day. And the wizard was not in the tier 1. He was middle of the road.
That's why I didn't like 4th edition.
Well, that's not all. I'm just saying, but that's just one guy's opinion. You know, tiers are kind of a little bit of an opinion.
Yeah.
And so, but it was like, I didn't even understand their tier. This is a mid to high. This is a low to mid. And I was like, whatever. But I just, and you know, I've heard nothing from people that the game played well, but I have no comment on the wizard. So I think we're just going to skip over 4E unless you guys have something.
Yeah.
Look at it this way. If you change the rules so drastically and you change how a wizard works so much between editions that you have to have one of your lore writers write into the game lore why this happened, I'm thinking of Ed Greenwood's, oh, wizards work this way because of the spell plague.
Right.
And I love Ed Greenwood, but
To be
I
fair,
mean, if you have to write it into your lore as to why your wizards now suck, you done screwed up.
hold on. I'm going to argue. I'm going to beg to differ a little. He did that also in the switch from first to second
Mhm.
and from second to third.
There was always something.
There was always something to describe how the spells were acting. But to Patrick's point, it was more about how the spells acted differently in first to second versus how the wizards were different in second to third. And I actually applaud that. I mean, if you're going to have a company that's going to have books and stories that are meant to emulate a very popular campaign world like the Forgotten Realms, I think you should. I mean, I don't think you should. I think it's cool that you make the switch and talk about it. If you want,
Don't get me wrong, I love Ed Greenwood, but
oh, me too. I know you're not knocking Ed. I'm sure he came down from on high. Hey, Ed, we need to talk about why everything's changing. Okay, spell
He's
play.
really easygoing, so he was like, "Oh, sounds good. I'll write that up right now."
I've met
Yeah.
him once or twice. I've seen him up. I mean, I didn't talk to him.
And if there's anybody I want to
Yeah.
narrate my game's lore, it would be Ed Greenwood.
Ed looks like he's a blast to play with, but
I love his voice.
yeah, it's really good. So then to Joe's favorite, right, Joe? We're coming to your favorite version of D&D now.
5th edition, yes, my favorite. Let me talk about it for a second here. Let me
Okay.
adjust my screen. I got to scroll a little bit.
Do
Oh,
we
wizard
have that
scroll.
long?
Hold on. All right, 5th
Rant
edition.
incoming.
It sucks. The end.
Oh, come on.
Okay, so 5th edition of Wizards bumped to D6. There's an implied 20th level cap. 0 to 9th level spells like 3rd edition. You can upgrade to spells to high level slots, but I thought, it's no good. It's like
with using higher level spell slots, I don't think you get enough bang for your buck.
No. That's why it didn't work all that well in some other. 13th Age did it much better.
Right? Oh God, yes.
So 13th Age, if you got the if you prepared or you cast, you had your fireball. I don't think you had to use a high level slot. Some spells scaled, some you were in a higher slot, but they did it much better.
For 13th Age, I remember when you first told me the concept that you lose lower level spell slots, I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. A wizard just eventually loses his powers. He can't cast sleep anymore, even if he wanted to. And then I took a closer look at it. It's like, wait a minute, I'm losing those spell slots, but I'm gaining higher level spell slots. Let me look at the spell list. Holy shit, sleep has a 1st level version, a 3rd level version, a 5th level version, a 7th level version, and a 9th level version.
Correct. Which I thought
oh my God, and they become boss.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
Like, this is the way magic should work.
So I remember me talking about low level slots for the longest as a high level wizard. Don't need them. I want to do something else with them. Can I do something else with them? Because they just sit there and rot.
Can I make my sleep spell more potent?
Yeah. And Randy said, get with it.
Well, eventually, in 3rd edition, I wasn't very generous, but I let you slowly get to where you could cast 1st, 2nd level spells for free, but that's not great.
But if you're going to do something different, this is a good different.
Yeah.
There's some other things I don't care for with 13th Age, but having a bunch of magic potential in a wizard and not casting it because it's kind of useless, it's kind of weird.
Yes.
As you get your 20th level and half of your spell potential is kind of paltry and useless. I can understand to some degree, maybe, because you are in a leveling system and there are things that are less powerful than other things. But I've always thought that, and that's a good thing about, I think, the earlier editions is, even though as a high level wizard, you might not necessarily, your party might not necessarily fight goblins all the time, but that sleep spell will get you in past a guard shack, can do all kinds of interesting things where you're not even in a fight really. It's more it can and there's probably some other examples. We're
And Magic
focusing on
Missile-
sleep because it's pretty boss first level spell.
And
But-
Magic Missile at high levels still give you some bang for the buck.
Right. Yeah. So especially in second and third, where they cut your number of missiles in half, essentially, if you're a high level wizard,
hmm
it stinks. It makes those low level spells, like Patrick said, eventually just worthless. It's kind of weird.
I think the DCs in 5e have some problems. There's a handful of spells that are any spell that requires a charisma save or an intelligence save is going to be super boss for a
Right.
wizard.
I've heard that.
You
Yeah.
are going to screw. I mean, granted, your warlock with his big charisma might be able to handle the charisma save, but you hit him with an intelligence save.
Right.
And the other wizard, you hit him with the charisma save, and it's it's pretty early. There's only a handful of them, but man, there's some really good ones like Banish. Banish.
There's a few things I don't like about what fifth edition did to Magic. One of the big ones is spell scaling by level. Spells always used to scale by level.
Now they don't.
Always. Well, I mean, save fourth edition, but now the only spells that actually scale with your level are like your cantrips. Like
Yep.
Firebolts, and Firebolt is a very nice cantrip because at like, I don't know, 17th level, you're essentially doing as much damage per round as a fighter probably would, but except you're doing it at range.
Cantrips
A
are
fighter can still outstrip you, but essentially a fighter is getting 4 attacks per round, and the 4d10 firebolt that you're probably casting is pretty much a good equivalent, except you're just doing it at range.
I don't like it. I think the cantrips are too good. I think they lose their. I don't even know why they're called cantrips.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they shouldn't be called cantrips.
Poison spray and some of theirs, they're just too good. It's not too good for the game. I think
Right.
Fifth edition is a fairly well balanced game. It's not I don't mind the balance in the game. It's not a huge amount of imbalance. I have issues with the counter spell. I've talked about that before.
I think the scaling level scaling cantrips are a big part of why wizards don't even have half the spell slots they used to.
Yes, correct.
I think they wanted you to rely more on cantrips, which I think cheapens a wizard.
It does. Just
You spam your cantrips all the time.
Spam your cantrips. Which happens in sometimes in 13th Age.
Yes.
You'll spam Ray of Frost, and that gets a little bit old.
Mhm.
I guess I don't want cantrips to be damaged. We'll get to Mudsword in a minute. I thought rituals were a good ad. I like how you got to spend time to ritual spells. You don't prepare.
Have you actually looked at the list of ritualable spells, though?
No, I just know
It's
if you.
not big
Well,
at all.
that's okay. I mean, that's not the end of the world. Are there
I think
spells?
it's like, I think the wizard has 10 spells total in his entire list that he can perform as rituals.
Oh,
Are they any good?
It's pathetic,
Are they
small
good
list.
ones? Are they good?
knock is one, I think.
I think knock is one. I think no, mage armor isn't one.
No,
Um,
I can't.
yeah,
even think.
the list is so
Detect
small.
magic.
I really can't.
Detect
even-
magic can be cast as a ritual, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's fine.
And Joe has some. He sent me a couple ideas on some spells that I think will help solve one of these problems you talked about, Joe, about spells becoming useless at higher levels. We'll talk about it in the mud. I like to talk about it a little bit in the mud, so I don't want to give it all away. But
Here's a strange throwback to fourth edition that I actually liked.
Mhm.
I liked ritual magic in fourth edition. Okay, now I will hang my head in shame.
how did it work different than fifth?
You had a book of rituals, and there was like a huge list of, it's like everything that wasn't like a daily power or something that you would burn in your normal repertoire of spells became a ritual spell. Now this included basically every utility spell you can think of in Dungeons and Dragons
So rope trick would
was a
qualify.
ritual.
So rope
And
trick, stuff
they
like that.
they took time to cast. They took several minutes, even to hours to cast, but you didn't rely on spell slots. You didn't rely on anything other than you required the time to be able to do it, and you required material components, and that was the big limiting factor. Is every single ritual required some material components that had a gold piece cost. Now I like that because it was infinitely utilitarian, and I mean, it wasn't just, I don't like the fact that it wasn't just wizards and clerics who could cast rituals. Basically anybody could do it if they took the feat for it, which I think is all kinds of wrong. But it kind of eliminated a need for spell slots. But the drawback is, like with knock being a ritual, sometimes knock needs to be cast really damn quick, because like let's say you're being chased down by a Baylor and you come up against a locked door. You don't have 10 minutes to cast the knock spell.
No,
You need
no.
it right the frick now.
And Gandalf's not there, so Patrick,
Yep.
get us F out of here.
But
Yeah.
I liked how utilitarian rituals were, and it was basically 80% of the spell list in a standard Dungeons and Dragons game were turned into rituals, and you just had an associated gold piece and time cost to cast them. And I really liked that.
Yeah, that's not bad. I also like 13th Age, but I'll talk about that in Mudsword. I like 13th Age ritual. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So right.
But back to
Right.
5th edition.
Back to 5th edition. So I like having the way they do it is like the Magister from Arcana Evolved. You have a set of spells that you have selected to be your today spells, and then you have
Best
a number
edition in 5th edition.
Yeah. And then you can cast a small number of those, that list. So you have a menu of spells for the day, and then you have your slots you can use with them. You don't have to prepare each spell slot independently.
Right. So
Love that.
if you're 3rd level and you got 2 first and 1 second, you may prepare 5 first level spells, of which you can pick 2, burning your slots. And you may prepare 3 second level spells, of which you can use 1, burning your slot. That makes the wizard more versatile. In my opinion, it also throws out the need for a sorcerer.
Right.
It's I think that's why they made metamagic specifically the purview of the sorcerer in 5th edition.
Yeah.
Because they had to have something.
And they had to have a sorcerer because everybody wants dragon blood running all through them.
Well, Joe, it's no fun if you don't have dragon blood.
Or whatever.
Dude, in the old days,
winning.
If a player had brought up to me, I want to be half dragon, I'd be like, no, you can be a half elf or half orc. Shut up.
I could see where I could see something akin to that being interesting. Instead of having a bunch of furries running around, perhaps at some point your character discovers that there's some weird mystical thing in their blood, in their family's blood, right? It might be they might have some weird heritage, and it could be draconic. That's fine, but you don't become a dragon, and you're not a half dragon. You're still human. You're a person, but you still have some quirkiness to you that's in your heritage that you can either lay dormant, or that you could express in some way that you and the DM can figure out.
I would here's how I would handle that. I wouldn't want like a draconic heritage. I think if you want to play around with dragon magic and you want to make yourself be able to be like for a short time become a dragon, or use dragon-like abilities, I would make some ancient spell or ritual or knowledge to be able to receive a dragon blood transfusion.
Hmm.
And make that something that you have to work towards. First of all, you got to kill a dragon, and it has to be of a certain age, and you got to gather up his blood, and then you have to have a couple other wizards do this blood transfusion on you. Then you can start gaining like dragon abilities. I'd bake it into like the magic system itself, rather than having it just being, I'm a furry who wants to be a half dragon.
That's
You know,
that's
look,
an interesting take as well. Yeah,
I'm not knocking anybody that wants to play all the different races,
sure,
but
sure.
Joe and I both prefer a more classic setup.
Human centric.
And currently, right now in Mudsword, which I think, elf, dwarf, halfling, human is all we got. We may expand.
The closest thing we had to half dragons before 4th and 5th edition came along
Even third,
was Dragonlance's Draconians.
but they were NPCs. But I'm sure players got to play them.
Yeah, because the majority of them, if not all of them, were evil.
Yeah, and third edition did introduce the Dragonborn. They were in there was races of the dragon. I remember that.
Yeah, there was some other
it was
dragon.
third edition?
There was some other dragon thing
Yeah.
as well. I can't remember what it was called.
there
I thought
was-
it was 4th.
Council of
Cran
Worms.
had Draconian. Council of Worms, you played actual dragons
Yeah,
in their servants, which are
Yeah.
humanoids or PC races. Yeah. So you guys are we good on 5th? Because I want to ask this question to kind of, because we already talked about the magic items and stuff, unless you guys want to talk more about
I favor talking less about 5th edition as possible.
it. So
If you wanted one short thing on magic items for 5th edition,
Yep.
I do like that they put a bigger cap on how many magic items you can have, and maybe increase some of its utility.
what do you mean?
I think the reliance on magic items was less in 5th edition than it was in previous editions.
Yes.
I don't like it.
Oh,
The problem is 3rd edition introduced a problem that they fixed a different way in 5th edition. 3rd edition introduced the glut of +1, +2, +3, everything, and lots of magic items you can just go buy. So
Yep.
instead of going to they said stuff like we're reaching back to our roots with 5th edition, but instead of having interesting magic items and leaving it up to the DM to distribute as they will, and taking away the magic item economy, so you have to work for them a little more, they decided to put coded in caps. You get 3 attuned items, and their suggested distribution of magic items means your potions and scrolls until 10th or 11th or 12th level.
at least a very high chance that will happen.
Yeah, that's their suggestion. You could do whatever you want, I suppose, but I think that given looking at the magic items from 5th edition and deciding that a lot of them made you interesting but not necessarily more powerful, but yet they still don't want you to have too many of them, kind of weird.
I think it does make you more powerful. I disagree.
No, I'm not saying none of them do. I'm just saying a lot of them don't necessarily make you that much more powerful. They just, like Cloak and Boots of Elvenkind. You get a
Right.
bonus on a skill. Yippee.
Right. Yeah, and skills are kind of poop in 5e anyway.
Yeah, so who
But
cares?
When I played with that Staff of Fire, that was several extra fireballs.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But so you're saying you like the attunement, Patrick? The 3 items? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if I would put like the hard cap on 3 attuned items,
Okay.
but Pathfinder's 2nd edition, I think, had a better version, but not perfect version of it.
Mhm.
I think the best version of attuning magic items, and I'm pretty sure Max from Legion of Myth would agree with me, is Earth Dawn,
Mm.
because you had to have a special talent to be able to bond magic items to you, and your ranks in that that is called thread weaving. You can weave a magical thread into a magic item and make it yours. And your ranks in that talent is how many bonded items you can have. So it's not a hard cap for every level. It's a cap that you can keep increasing, and it also dictates how high each one of those threads can go, because just about every bonded magic item in the game has a series of levels. It's like you gain experience points for your magic item too. Like if you find a magic sword and you bond to it, you just get its first level power, which is probably a +1 to hit or whatever. But as you discover the history of the magic item and you level up your attunement to it, I remember one big magic item was Kegel's broadsword. The first level power had some bonus to hit. Like another power was it's able to light up and shed light like a torch. Another level of power is you can sheath the blade in flames and it does extra damage. And then it had like I think an ice power or something like that, but the powers would keep getting better and more variable as you leveled up the item. I think its maximum thread rank was like 10 or something like that, but you'd have to have that thread weaving at rank 10 before you could level it up that much. And you could have like several other magic items bound to you. It was all determined on how much you want of your experience points, which is called legend points, that you wanted to spend on ranking up your thread weaving talent. It still put a cap on all the extra power you can amass, but it was tied into like character level. And really, the way they design magic items, you don't need them to be a better character. You can be a kick-ass character on your own, but you will want to pick up a magic item or two to like top off the power level. But unlike some previous editions of like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons, especially like 3E, you didn't require the Christmas tree and hanging all your items on your Christmas tree to be an effective character, because in like 3rd edition you really couldn't play a straight character with no magic items at all unless you were playing Monty Cook's Iron Heroes.
Well, they had the big 6 was a big discussion on the boards about the big 6 magic items.
Right. So you would have to, if you basically didn't have magic items, the DM just had to throw softballs all the time.
Yeah. Do you think though, in that game in Earthdawn, did you have to like, was it just a matter of killing monsters or doing adventures and getting experience points and you'd boost it up? Or did you have to specifically hunt down lore for your item to learn about it?
You had to specifically hunt down lore because some levels were locked by lore or quests. Like I remember this thing called the Frost Pouch, which allows you to reach in, draw frost, and cast like a cold ball or something, or a blizzard spell. And there was one, to unlock its higher tier ability, you had to discover like the true name of the Frost Pouch and the true name of the wizard who made it. And you had to unlock its top tier powers. You had to go to the mountain in which the ice elemental or air elemental lived that gave its essence to the pouch, and you've got to summon it up and make a new bond with it in order to unlock that top tier ability. So a lot of adventuring and a lot of plot hooks were baked into your own magic items.
3rd edition had a book called Weapons of Legacy, which had leveled items, which is pretty good. I think also in 2nd edition or 1st edition, probably in Dragon magazines, people talked about that because I remember doing that, giving items that would get better as the character leveled. I think that's a great idea for magic items to grow with the character, but not every one of them. It's kind of like kind of like in 13th Age, where you can have too many relationship points out and everybody's
Mhm,
trying to
mhm,
affect the
mhm.
story and it gets crazy. Everybody has 2 or 3 bonded magic items. You got to go through all these quest lines. Everybody's always, I want to make my pouch of frost cooler. I want to make my sword of awesomeness better. And everybody's got to running around. And the stories would kind of get a little bit about just seeking out your magic item powers. I think it's, at least it feels to me, it could be a little, there would be a danger there, but maybe Earth Dawn handles that differently. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad as I'm thinking. I don't know.
Yeah, I think having the older versions of D&D, this stuff was open-ended and
Yes.
broadly adjudicated by the DM.
Yep.
So the DM could set the tone as far as how many, how frequently, how powerful the magic items were that the players found. And I prefer that now to having the magic item economy.
Yep.
And I think that if there was if leveled items or items that grew with power, if you, the more you invested in them, kind of like Earth Dawn, if that was an option for certain magic items, instead of it being all, then I think that would fit D&D better, instead of it being the overriding way you did things. Because in Earth Dawn, you'd have to spend leveled resources on that, right? So when you gain your experience points, and you would spend whatever it is, if it's not the experience points directly, it's some other thing to invest in your magic items, correct?
Correct.
Right.
But it's not like, I don't think it's like D&D's experience points, because you get legend points for a lot of shit you do. And each individual talent that you possess in Earth Dawn has its own experience chart.
Right.
And legend points get stupid large the closer you hit the cap of like rank 15.
Right.
Achieving rank 15 in Earth Dawn is probably the equivalent of hitting like level 30 or 40 in a standard D&D game.
Are all magic items bonded in Earth Dawn?
No. You
Okay.
do have consumable magic items, like, for example, light quartzes. They're a quartz crystal that you like, you say a magic word, or you knock it on a rock and it'll shed light like a torch.
Okay.
That's an example of just they call them common magic items.
Gotcha.
Bonded magic items are far more powerful and have far more utility.
Oh, kind of like
And
artifacts and relics.
They're usually the equivalent of the magical treasure that you find.
Okay.
And not stuff that you can just pick up at an apothecary.
So everybody's not likely to have 4 or 5 of those dudes on their body?
No.
Oh, okay.
And if you're a good Earth Dawn game master, if you give your party a magic item like that, more often than not, you're going to craft the opportunities to do your stuff along with your regular campaign. You're not going to have everybody go out of their way for like this big long Fellowship of the Ring-esque journey just to unlock one power of your magic item. You're gonna, it's like, we're going to the Misty Mountains. Oh, okay, my frost pouch, that's where the ice elemental lives that gave power to my frost pouch. While we're there, can I do this?
That makes sense.
Do you guys think, I'm going to ask it all together, has any version of D&D gotten the wizard right? Hold on, let me finish. It's 3-part. What's your favorite version of the wizard in D&D? And is it the same as your favorite version of D&D?
So just D&D, not D20 games.
Okay, well, I don't want to go too far. Let's say D&D. Let's just say Dungeons and Dragons. No, none of them's got it right. What's your favorite version of the wizard then, Joe?
Arcane Evolved.
Okay, so okay, that's fine. So definitely
Now,
no
so,
D&D.
so I'll describe it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorcerer, wizard, cleric combined. Has elements of all three.
Yep.
However, many of the spells are reduced in power. So that the Magister, this is what the class is called. It has healing. It has all these different things they can do, but they're not the damaging blaster that a lot of people tried to make in 3rd edition. Did that come out? That came out during 3rd edition?
yeah.
Okay, I can't remember.
Arcana Unearthed came out during 3E, and
Yeah.
Arcana Evolved came out during 3.5. And you're talking, so really, the Magister is a magic user.
Yeah.
Meaning he's not just a arcane or divine. He uses magic.
It's like he's the magic user.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, and so you have a menu of spells. You use your slots to prepare to cast during the day. You don't memorize. So
The closest thing you had to a cleric was a green bond.
Right. And
but they could use all the same spells as a magister.
Yeah.
Eventually he'll get it right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever heard him.
Latin scholar in me balks at magister. It has always been magister to me.
Yeah, it's too magooster for me.
Not magister. That's a J.
Yeah.
Anyway, powerful, but controlled in that the spells are, I think in general, a step or two down from 3rd edition spells.
Yes.
So I liked it because of the versatility, not necessarily the power, because I don't think they had the kick of a 3rd edition wizard,
No,
or maybe even a 1st edition wizard.
They did, but you had to burn feats to gain those spells. You had
exotic
fireball
spells.
and lightning
Exotic
bolt,
spells.
But they were exotic.
They were exotic spells.
Yeah.
Now, magisters were super cool in the fact that they, right from the word go, have access to both simple and complex magic, which no other spellcaster does. But exotic spells you had to take feats for, and that's where you got your fireball and your lightning bolt from. Except you could just choose to make it any element you want.
Right. I think it had a couple of superfluous abilities. One of them was heighten and diminish, because it had too many moving parts. Right. The heighten and diminish part of it was that each spell had a level up version and a level down version.
Yep. And
as much as I played it, I always forgot those, because the base spell was almost always fine the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of always had to have the core book with you and open to really
capitalize on all the options.
Capitalize on the diminished and heightened spells.
Yeah.
But since it's not technically Dungeons and Dragons, and we are
Joe already blew that out of the water a little.
Yeah.
No, Arcana Evolved.
I will have to agree. Arcana Evolved was my favorite magic user in the Magister.
How do you say
it's
it?
Magic. It's magic. So why is it in it Magister?
I say it Magister because Magister is Latin for teacher.
Yeah.
And every day in Latin class, the first thing the teacher says is Salve discipuli, which is hello students, and we would say Salve magister, which is hello teacher.
I get that.
But I thought no one knew how Latin was actually spoken. Or am I thinking of something else?
You're thinking of something else.
Okay,
Sanskrit.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Right. So,
Oh.
to be serious about the question,
So it's okay.
it's
I agree with
difficult.
you guys,
It's
by the way.
difficult because get it right is very subjective.
Yep.
So to me, I've read many fantasy novels with wizards in them, and D&D does not emulate novel wizards at all.
Yeah.
Apart from perhaps the advanced novels, but maybe not even. I've heard people say that that's not really even the case.
No.
So,
I've read Dying Earth.
and I understand that me saying that is probably it's a whine. It's a bit of a whine because we're not necessarily supposed to be emulating novel wizards or movie wizards or whatever. D&D has a wizard and it works a particular way.
Yep.
So,
I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting
correct,
to emulate.
Right, but D&D doesn't do that. It doesn't emulate media things very well.
I don't think role-playing games can do that terribly.
It's difficult because, I mean, okay, let's take Dune, right? Try to emulate Dune in a game, right? And what will happen is everybody will try to become a Kwisatz Haderach because they rule everything. They'll try to become a Mentat and a Bene Gesserit somehow. They'll kidnap a Bene Gesserit and make them teach them how to do their thing, which did happen
Teach
in
me
the
the
novels
weirding way.
because they kidnapped which one was it? Jessica. They kidnapped Jessica and tried to force her to teach a child how to be a Bene Gesserit, but she ended up bonding with that child and turning him to the good side and taught him how to do this stuff. But
for Star Wars,
every
try
Force user wants to be Luke Skywalker or Yoda.
Right, but even a weak Force user is probably better than your average person in general. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the lore.
Star Wars they were.
Well, I don't know the. Well, I think I don't know the movie lore doesn't have enough Jedi in it to really make any judgments. There's only a couple in the early novel, in early movies. But if you take the entire extended canon from the novel series,
you can make a role-playing game out of it.
But you could also have a better handle on how powerful Jedi are in general, instead of just looking at Luke and saying, wow, if you're going to be Luke, then why be anything else? So I don't know if a Jedi in general are that head and shoulders and the rest of your body on top of a statue above everybody else. I don't know if that's the general truth about Jedi.
I'm no expert, but Jango Fett fought Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones. Let's just not judge the movie because it was poop. But when they were fighting, Jango Fett pulled every stinking trick he could. And he held his own against Obi-Wan. But Obi-Wan
he was able to escape.
And then when he faced Mace Windu, he got smoked.
Right.
In like 3 seconds. Because Jedis are that much better than even. And Jango Fett's like one of the baddest bounty hunters. He was had Mandalorian armor. I mean, and the Mandalorian would get annihilated by a halfway decent Jedi. I'm sorry, he would annihilate.
So can you really?
Which is why they had a hard time. Which is why you had to introduce game balance in a role-playing game for Jedi.
That's my argument. So you can't make a Star Wars game where the Jedi is. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. You can if you want to emulate the movies and the books. He's the best character. If you want to emulate most books, say you want to emulate comic books and do wizards like Doctor Strange, he's the best. And most books, wizards do the Gandalf. He's the baddest walking of the Fellowship, hands down. He's even a pretty decent fighter. And so wizards just dominate. So that was my comment was you can't.
On top of that, there were only 5 wizards.
Right.
Everybody else who claimed it. Yeah. And everybody else who claimed any kind of knowledge of that power They were pretenders on some level.
And they weren't even humans. They weren't people. They were what,
Right.
bio-
They were angels, essentially.
Right. Basically. So the wizard, go ahead.
So in all of this, getting it right, it's kind of it's hard to answer question.
Agreed. I agree.
And definitely your mileage may vary.
Yes.
So do you like a game where because in second edition and first edition, and even third, really, though you can make some counter guys, the wizard was king. He was uber. Fifth edition, I don't know, maybe. Fourth edition, probably not. 13th age, no. He's really good, but he's not the king.
Mm-mm.
He's as good as everybody else. I
think even Joe and I have in our minds what our ideal wizard is, even though we're probably very similar. Even he and I probably have different ideas of what the perfect wizard would be. And for me, the most rock star of wizards for like the D20 games, at least up through 3X, would be Arcana Evolved. For me, it just happens to be the same thing for Joe.
Yeah.
Dude, my question is, so this is probably going to lead us into the Mudsword discussion. Do you guys like in a game, because we're currently, the way I'm envisioning it, the wizard is the most powerful class on high level.
Right.
And
so
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I was going to say, even being the character who wields the most raw power,
Mm-hmm.
a first edition, even second edition, an older version of the wizard has gigantic weaknesses.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
The biggest one is their hit points.
Yep.
And they have very few. Even a high level wizard has that weakness. They don't have nearly the hit points anybody else does. So, and their armor class is never going to approach and any combatant's armor class, even with spells. I mean, shield is good. It makes your armor class good. But once the fighter gets rocking with decent armor, gets a couple of magic pieces of armor, it's still decent, but nothing like that. So if I'm going to say for D&D, the old wizard is the best as far as that. Even pre-third edition, because while they're very powerful at high level, the one constant throughout the game is that they have the giant hit point weakness. So if they turn the corner and there's a big beefy ogre, and that ogre gets the first swing and the wizard happens, accidentally to be within reach of the ogre, the wizard's going to die, most likely. One swing.
If not, he's not going to get away.
Right.
We discussed wizards as being an investment earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as an investment, I think the wizard deserves to be the most powerful character at later levels because they've had so many handicaps at earlier levels. It's kind of like your payoff.
Yeah. My question is, do you like that? Joe says yes.
Yeah.
I also like that.
Okay. So versus the third edition paradigm or fourth edition and maybe fifth edition, third edition less so, but the idea was we're all on the same experience point chart. We're all roughly equal, CR appropriate encounters. Everybody should be fourth level, fighting fourth level monsters. So
all those editions chase the unicorn of balance.
Yes, I agree.
And I think they all fail in different kinds of ways. The fourth edition, if they achieve balance, they make the game boring.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was it. They achieved, balance at the cost of enjoyment and character, uniqueness.
Yeah.
Just utterly making the game boring. But the math worked. I'm sorry, I'm never gonna let that go.
Real quickly then, before we jump into playing in the mud, if that's okay. I mean, I want to ask a question. Other games outside of D&D? Do you have a favorite Magic user, and do you like it more than Arcana Evolve? Let's use that as our tentpole version of the Wizard.
I will say right out there, one of my favorite role-playing games is Ars Magica.
Mhm.
The game is literally about wizards, and mainly just about wizards. And from out from the gate, wizards are rock stars. They're the focal point of the game. So that's naturally where I'm gonna go. And yes, I think it's even more so than Dungeons and Dragons. However, it's also a different kind of game too.
Especially if you play it the way it's
in-
written
Yeah,
with the troop style play.
I don't care for troop style play. When I run a game, I let everybody
Be a wizard.
be a wizard.
Would you say the same, Joe? Would Ars Magica be your
It's
favorite
pretty.
D&D Wizard?
It's okay for what, with the caveat that everybody plays a wizard, sure, but the way the game is meant to be played is troop style, and you might not even play a wizard that day. You might play the grogs and a few camp followers, and you're going to chase down some Weiss down in some cave somewhere for the wizard, and they're going to stay home and study. So you may not even play the wizard that day. So with that caveat, I would say probably a I'm trying to remember where it's from. Phase Rip.
Oh, Marvel superheroes, yeah.
So you could emulate Doctor Strange pretty well without being Doctor Strange. You don't necessarily have to be as powerful as him, but you can have a lot of versatility. And I think to a lesser extent, Savage Worlds supers made wizards really cool.
Yeah.
And
Super sorcerer.
a super sorcerer.
Yeah.
And the same, if I'm remembering correctly, mutants and masterminds.
Yeah. I just got, speaking of that, I just got my superpowers companion PDF for Suede, the alpha version. So
am I remembering the correct name? The superhero D20, is it mutants and masterminds?
Yeah, mutants and masterminds. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Came out on the heels of third edition. Yeah.
Right.
And there's like
I
3 or 4
really,
versions.
well, there was a great superhero version for D20, and
Yeah.
So yeah.
Essentially, super sorcerers were really super because basically every power in the book was up for grabs.
Oh, they were
as spells.
They were unbelievable. All right. Anything else on the wizards throughout the ages? And before we move into the Mudsword segment, which is this going to be our last segment, Joe? I think today.
Yeah.
We're not going to do.
Shadowrun wizards are pretty rock star too.
Like that. Yeah.
But all these not D&D versions are not the 0 to hero version. They're the out the gate, you are the man.
Yeah, Shadowrun was pretty much like that. And it didn't matter whether you were a hermetic magician or a shamanic magician, you're still pretty boss right out the gate.
Right. Yeah. I'll have to say one last thing about older D&D version wizards is in first edition. I'm not sure if second changed it. In first edition, it took forever to memorize your spells. 15 minutes, 15 minutes per spell level. So it's no wonder you couldn't find a high level wizard to go with you anywhere, because as soon as they cast the spell, they take some hours to memorize it again. Yeah. It's kind of dumb. Yeah. It's a very limiting.
You have that online meme for hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy back in the day. I remember that too, because Joe and I figured it out for a 20th level wizard. Like, it's going to take you a day and a half to memorize your spells,
and you don't get to sleep.
No.
BECMI was an hour for your spell repertoire, no matter what level you are.
I'm kind of fine with that, honestly. Yeah. All right.
And in a BECMI, they didn't trust the players. they suggested that the DM and the player both have a copy of the spell book, so that if somehow the player's copy was different from the
Yeah,
DM's copy, you
got
need to
that
slap
right.
that player around some.
Let me see your character sheet, Joe and Patrick.
Plus,
Oh, Patrick's got Tensor's floating disc. You don't have that spell.
plus, it specifically outlined that the DM was the final arbiter of magic and spells, so such that he could change all the spells, say, yeah, there's no fireballs in my world, and all total control. So if you go that route, you probably should, fess up, after someone makes a wizard, but
Nope. Wait till you pick your spells, till you cast it. Oh, Magic Missile doesn't do a D6+1. It does
No,
D2 minus
no,
stuff.
Randy. I cast Big B's disrespecting hand. I will show you exactly where to place Big B's fist.
Oh, hello. Okay, Patrick, you can do a D6+1. Yeah. So Joseph sent me a sweet little file today. He
You
had
want to share it to the screen?
I don't know if I want to share it or not, because I don't know if I can find it exactly. Here it is. Is it? Nope, that's mine. I will share it once I find it. Yeah, so I will share screen if I can get my head out of my butt.
Oh, we're very entertained by your head being in your butt. So keep it
Yes, I'm trying to share screen, but it says one participant.
Cranial rectal inversion.
I don't seem.
You're not finding it?
Hold
on. It might be easier for me because I might even have it just up.
I have it handy. I'm just not doing it. Why can't I figure out how to share it?
Because you're an old guy.
It says share screen. I'm trying.
Share screen.
There. Oh, I think I did it.
No? Oh, there
Let's
it goes.
go,
There it goes.
Okay. Cool. Those watching versus those listening. Yeah. So Joe did a little.
That was gripping programming. Just to let you know.
We're toying with the idea of wizards changing how they cast spells as they level. So 1 to 7's classic Vancian. And then 8 to 14 was going to be sort of Magister. Is that right, Joe? Is that
something like that? Yeah.
And then higher level is going to be more like kind of a spell point system or something version. So
I like the heightened spell level stuff.
Yeah,
you're just taking spells that do like similar effects,
right,
and throwing them under one spell and just making the level requirement or spell slot requirement higher. That's cool. I like
Joe
that.
and we've talked about in the past. Well, go ahead, Joe. You wrote it. Go ahead.
Okay, so the idea is that just some proposals for different ways that wizards with just using slots, right? No spell points necessarily, or anything like that. You just have your slots. So with detect magic, can you scroll up? Will the whole spell fit? No. Just so that we can see just detect magic. There we go. The whole thing there. Just leave it right there. And move your cursor so that decrease size fonts. There we go. Now you can see the whole thing. The first 2 lines under effect is the base spell.
Yes.
That's all you need. And this also can be modular. So if the DM looks at this and says, I don't like it, you can just use the base spell and there's no need to worry about modifying anything.
Right.
So a couple of different things that the character could do with the slot once you've prepared detect magic is to have 2 slots. You use 2 of your slots to prepare. You have to be 7th level as a caster, and then the spell is not expended. So essentially, you create an at-will effect with detect magic. So once you hit 7th level, you use 2 of your slots. So this is in an OD+D or BECMI style game where even if you have a 30 intelligence somehow,
Right.
your spell slots don't go up.
Right.
So you're going to probably only have 4 or 5, even
Right.
at very high level.
Right.
Not
Maybe
expended on
6.
use is a pretty powerful thing, though.
Yes. So 2 slots, and you use 2 slots, and then, but you have to prepare them. So both of those slots are locked up. So that's just a potential, and this could be a little fiddled with, maybe 9th level requirement or something. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is the heightened, where you prepare detect magic normally.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you need to do something different with it. You can expend a 3rd level slot to do the arcane eye type of effect.
Right.
You still keep your 1st level slot, so you still have detect magic under your belt.
Right.
So it's kind of like the utility spell from 13th age, where
Yes.
except in 13th age, you had to prepare each one. This
Right.
one, I like better because it's.
Oh, well, I do
better.
too, Joe. And I like it because remember we used to talk about monster summoning 1, monster summoning 2, monster summoning 3. I hated that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, it just seemed ridiculous. Why don't you have summon monster? And then depending on what slot you use it, you prep it at or burn, depending on what you're doing, you get to summon that higher level monster.
Right.
And
So
I think that's good. And I
Yeah.
like the fact that you married similar sort of detect spells that seem very connected to this in with this spell. Because I want in the end of Mudsword, I don't want 400 spells.
right.
I want
So
less.
So then the idea here is that you get utility. So this detect magic is a utility spell.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could fashion any utility spell to do like this. But my idea is we only have a few that do these types of things.
Right.
But it provides a pattern. So if sometime later a player wants to research doing this to a spell that's not already fashioned this way, you could do that. Or say we distribute this game and the DM says, oh, well, I think this spell would be great like that. And there's a pattern. So there's a way to do it. So if you scroll down to Fireball, it has a similar but different thing.
Yeah. I think you took it looks like it smells a little bit of
it's more DCC.
Yeah, I like it. I like that. Yeah.
I saw the natural one roll.
Yeah.
So with an elemental spell, okay. Another thing about older school magic in D&D is the way it's described is the wizard learns how to manipulate magical energy. So at a very basic level, D&D is assumed that there is something called magical energy that's around somewhere. Mm-hmm. So with an elemental spell, I thought it'd be cool that if you wanted it to do something more, you could, but you would introduce risk. And what you risk is the magical energy bleeding over to the elemental plane and some of that spilling back into you and not going well. So if you roll poorly, like a natural 1, you become the center of the fireball. I didn't put any caveats as far as what you might get the saving throw or not. I'm going to leave that up to Randy as the DM, and Randy's going to say, no saving throw, you're in the middle.
Save. Take it, wizard.
I can really see the hints of Dungeon Crawl Classics in here, and I think that's a good thing because I really liked what Dungeon Crawl Classics did with the spells. They cut down, they really trimmed down the spell list, but some of those spells have like 20 different uses.
And some crazy. If you roll really high, you can just annihilate stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but because of that, they put in that risk factor of I might be the center of that fireball.
Now, an idea I had later on, and this is inspired by a book I read. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but in it, fire mages ran a risk of becoming possessed by a very powerful elemental being, a very powerful fire elemental. And if they lose control, the fire elemental will consume their body, be this 20-foot tall fiery beast that consumes everything it can in the immediate area. And once it's done that, it goes away. So if it's in like a forest, the forest is pretty much going to get incinerated, the whole thing. So I didn't build that into this. Essentially, it's just either you get damaged by your own spell, the spell fizzles, or it gets better. So if you do take the risk, you do not get the base D6. It's either going to be lower or it's going to be higher.
There you go. Yeah. So for example, if you could manage to get a 25 with your modified intelligence, you're saying you would spend 2 spell slots if you're 9th level, 2 3rd level spell slots, and you'd cast a fireball. And if you max that puppy out, that would be 9d20 damage.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I love it. That's fine. No
Now,
issue.
And then that's I don't know if it's too powerful or not, but I'd love to play it out and see how it works.
Yeah.
You might end up killing yourself more than often than not.
Well, we'll try it and see. I'm good with that. I like your wand focus and power components. Yeah, and we got some other ideas for shield. Yeah, this is good, Joe. I think this is good. And I like the idea of not changing too many of them.
Right. So the idea is utility spells can be fashioned into multi-use spells. Attack spells, you can increase risk to get better damage.
Right.
And then defense spells, if you go down to shield, I can't remember. They basically for shield, and this is just a nod to Gandalf.
Yeah.
If you heighten it, in a 3rd level slot, you can cast it as a reaction to an attack, not the reaction thing from 5th edition, but not as a category of thing, but just if you get attacked, you can immediately cast a shield.
Right. Almost like 3rd edition reaction spell.
Right.
A reaction action, or what do they call it? No, I forget what it's called. But
yeah, it's a reaction in 5th edition, but I'm not calling this a category of action. It's just describing what you're doing.
Is that all you have right now for the shield spell?
Yeah.
Is there anything more?
No.
Do you see
I suggest a heightened effect of shield being something like blade turning or arrow turning or even spell turning?
You mean back upon the attacker?
Yeah, for a significantly heightened power.
So like for a 5th or 4th or 5th, maybe 6th, you could turn the attack back on the you get the regular effect plus it turns the attack back on.
That could be a pretty high level one, but yeah, that could be good. I just made a quick note, kind of like the volley spell. Hey, is that when I highlight, can you see where I highlight that? Is that the actual description of the spell?
Well, I've modified it to be brief, but yes.
You get +7 against, +5 against, so your armor class goes up to 5.
But it's translated to ascending armor class. Because it's armor class 2 against missiles.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good. That's a good, those are good spells. I really do. Okay, I'm gonna stop the sharing if we're good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So essentially I was just thinking defensive spells act differently than attack spells, act differently than utility spells in this paradigm. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
I've liked watching Mudsword evolve.
I think Mudsword is going to have a lot more. There's more evolution to come.
So and like I said, I'm not saying even very many, even though the spell list is small.
Right.
3, 4, 5 spells of any particular level. We do this with tinker with, maybe fewer, and just.
We may want to try just to do 2 or 3 because that's. And then see how it works out. Because I think we can go down the list. I bet we will find higher level spells that are like, man, this would fit better. Just like you had Arcane Eye and Analyze Dwemer. It'll fit better inside this family of spell called Detect Magic. Yeah. Analyze Dwemer is that basically Identify?
I can't remember precisely what it does, but it's a higher level version of Detect Magic and that.
Because I don't think BECMI has the Identify spell per se.
It has, yes, it does. It's not called Identify. It's called Analyze.
Right.
And so that would that could potentially be rolled into this as well. But they're both first level spells. Analyze is pretty worthless at first level. You only get 15% chance plus 5% plus.
Yeah.
It doesn't automatically tell you it's magic. It just says you pick up an item, and the only thing you might get out of it with that 15% is that it's magic.
I'm inclined to totally throw that spell out, replace it with our own version of identify. And I'm fine putting it in that tree of detect magic.
You could even say detect magic cast as a ritual is identify.
Correct.
Because
I like that
you
idea.
don't need to cast it ever. You need to cast it in combat. So you can relegate that to a ritual.
Which is what I wanted to talk about. I like the idea of rituals, and I think I want to do something akin to I don't think I want to, yeah, I think I like the idea of certain spells being able to be ritualistically cast. I do have a little bit of a fan of the indie school approach 13th Age takes, where they do ritual casting. You literally, that means you do some ritual hoping for some magical effect that may or may not, and it's not limited by your level. It's not limited by, it's basically your imagination. And I don't know if it even requires one of the relationship chips, but basically you can have really cool, crazy stuff happen. And then the game master can decide what the cost is to you. But I don't think I want to make our game as indie game as that. I think I just want to kind of categorize as, if you cast this as a ritual, then blah. If you cast it as a ritual, then blah.
I remember playing 13th Age with Aaron, and there was this like tsunami of water that was coming our way and was going to overtake this caravan we were protecting.
Mhm.
And I used a very, very quick ritual casting to turn like this wall of like it was either a shield or a wall of force spell into a barrier that was basically a break wall for the waves. That was pretty cool.
And I think
That's cool.
and I think what they say in 13th Age is you can never do that again either. And that is, Patrick could never do the exact same thing again, because that sort of ritual casting magic is not predictable in 13th Age. That is, if you try to bend it to your will outside of the specific powers that wizards have, you can't count on, because someone would say, why don't you just do the same ritual again and do it again? There's no guarantee magic will react that way. And that's kind of a cool part of that.
I don't know if I entirely agree, but it does remind me of, I can't remember the book series, but there was one book series where wizards, when they cast spells, they can't cast the same spell twice. By what I mean by that is the actual incantation for the spell. Like you cast Fireball once, and the incantation you use, once you've used it, you can never use that incantation again. When you cast Fireball again, you have to make up a new incantation for it. So it can never be the same incantation twice.
I think 13 Days is just trying to keep you from going to the well too many times.
Right.
And get some mechanical control. But at least they're justifying by saying you can't guarantee when you reach into the weave or the whatever you're going to call the magic part of the world, you can't guarantee what you're going to pull out every time. And magic, and I think they describe it as magic adjusts to how wizards affect it, and it changes its own rules, and I don't know. But it's fine for a more freewheeling, narrative game.
I think I'm in favor of the ritual thing being loosely worded.
Yep.
So that if we do sell this or give it, any DM can look at it and say, oh, that's cool. I'll use it in this way. It might not be precisely the same across tables.
Right.
I think, this thought is not related, so we'll talk about this later.
Well, just like on my experience point table, you notice I put down an option, and I tried to phrase it in such a way that this is how we do it, but there's other options too. We talked about that too. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good bit of discussion there. Do you have any other ideas at the moment that you wanted to mention about Mudsword, or Patrick? Do you have 2 cents you wanted to throw in too?
Let me say one thing, and this is why I was thinking in the vein that I was to create those changes to those spells. I like characters to have some customizability.
Yeah.
However, the bad way to do it is the way 3rd edition did it with feats. Wizards have always been customized by their spell choices, clerics by their deity choices, and fighters by their weapon choices. So this is leaning into that.
Yeah.
So how this could be used for customizing from player to player could be they rather just have a spell do a thing and be done with it than try to work with spells that have varying effects and potential danger. So they're going to stay away from all of that. They'll just go with the rote stuff.
Yeah.
Others will take chances and fiddle around. They might even convince the DM to let them research a new version of some other spell that's not structured in these ways.
Right.
So I would rather lean into what D&D gave us traditionally, which is wizards select their spells, use slots, and customize along those lines. Not have a bunch of new feats and different rules bits that we're going to introduce every once in a while, like other games may do. A wizard does these things and you customize them within the things that they do well, which is spells. Now, if we make a necromancer, let's say, which I'm not necessarily big on doing because necromancers are evil and should be the enemy, not the players.
I feel like the necromancer is the purview of the DM.
Yeah. But if we did, then they would be customized still within spell selection. But I would say their spell selection would be more limited than a wizard who is a general practitioner, whereas a necromancer focuses on fiddling with dead bones because he's a weirdo. So customizing is where I started in this thought process.
Okay, cool. Patrick, do you have any comments since you played Mudsword a little bit and seen the magic worked out? Are you?
I think if you guys are going to start implementing these new rules, I would really love to bring in a wizard.
Good, man.
Because
right.
I really like this new spell design you have, and
Sure.
I really want to sink my teeth into it.
Yep. And you can, the play test is such that I'm going to give experience points for characters, but if someone brings a new character in, they're starting at probably at least the same experience point total, depending on their class, probably experience point total as the character they have. Because now starting at 3rd level, you'll be getting experience points. And I sent that out to everybody. And we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk more about that later.
That's great for the play test. In regular gameplay, I would say start at 1st level.
Ooh, even for everybody's 9th level?
I don't care.
Ooh, Joe. Going old school, baby. Yeah. Screw those dead characters.
Or
players of dead characters.
So if characters are high enough level, like you said, 9th level, that's name level-y, and you have proteges, camp followers and whatnot, you have people running around that are already known characters who have background and are part of the tale of the party.
Well,
those guys, you could start out, you can play any one of those guys and they could have levels.
You guys have a man at arm. I would say man at arms, but a man at arm. You have that one-handed elf.
Right.
Remember? So you
That's
actually
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, unless you guys are going to turn him away, he said he would serve you guys for a year free of charge. So
that sounds great. He might be permanent.
Yeah.
If it works out.
Somebody dies, they could take over him if they wanted to.
Right. Maybe regenerate the rest of his arm so it'd be useful.
That's up to you guys. Yeah. Currently, no. No, but he's going to be he's not left-handed. So
I am not left-handed.
Maybe that can be one of those cleric abilities they can do with their healing touches. At a later level would be regenerate.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, on a note, Joe, I have started with barbarian. I have barbarian started that would be playable, but I'm not sure if he's good, but he's possibly playable. The druid,
good.
Not yet, but okay, cool. All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this up, huh?
Yeah. Anything anybody else wants to say at all before we wrap?
Pointy Hat Games by Elemental Conflux.
Do it.
I would appreciate it.
Where is
Do
Pointy
it.
Hat Games located on the web, Patrick?
It's a very
Uh,
small investment.
Pointyhat.games.
Easy. Go get that card game. You'll love it.
All right. If there's nothing else, if you would
Nope.
like to support our show, please visit the many places you can find us on the interwebs. Our website, biggestgeekestpodcast.com. Click on support and 4 ways that you can give us your money. Twitter at Biggest Geekus. Facebook, also Biggest Geekest Podcast. We're on MeWe, Odyssey, YouTube. We got to update this list here.
Okay.
The link here should say, instead of channel and a bunch of gobbledygook, it should say C Biggest Geekus.
Oh, okay.
C/Biggest Geekus.
Okay.
And our email, thegeeks@biggestgeekespodcast.com. Share this with your friends and let us know if there's any way if there is another way that you listen or watch that we could support better. Please subscribe, like, share, and rate us in all the places that you find us. Anything else, fellas?
Thanks for being on, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Always a
fun.
pleasure.
It was fun.
Absolutely.
This is Joe.
And I'm Randy.
And I'm
And
Patrick.
Yeah, baby.
And remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.
Yeah.